June 8th at 6:30 p.m. And let's start with our call to our roll call.
Certainly.
Dr. Bryant, thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Chafe.
Here.
Commissioner Dram.
Here.
Commissioner Gitzoni has an excused absence this evening. Commissioner Simons.
Here.
Commissioner Zepko.
Here.
Vice Chair Mendez has an excused absence this evening, and Chair Keller.
Here.
So we have a quorum of 5 commissioners present.
Very good. And
I
go ahead. Do you want to do the COVID script?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
I would like to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to newly enacted California Assembly Bill 361. The city was previously complying with the Brown Act orders issued by the governor, which were aimed at containing the novel coronavirus and which expired on September 30th. This new bill gives local agencies the authority to continue to host virtual meetings until January 1st, 2024, as long as California is under a governor-declared state of emergency. In order to continue meeting subject to this exemption to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission must make findings by majority vote no later than 30 days after it starts using the exemption and every 30 days thereafter, and will not do so at this meeting because you did it at the last meeting on May 26th until the governor lifts the state of emergency. City Hall is open to the public during regular business hours, that is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. The planning and building counters have different hours. Please check or make an appointment before visiting. The agenda states that the public may view the meeting that is being live streamed online and on ETV channel 27 and provide comment by submitting an online comment form, which will then be read into the record by staff. The comment form can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville Planning Commission webpage and clicking on the link entitled Submit an Online Speaker Card. The public also has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide public comment during the meeting using the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you are calling in, press *9. The Zoom call-in information was provided on the posted agenda as well as via e-notification and on social media.
Very good. Thank you very much. So that's all we need to do on those legalities, correct?
Yes, there is also a little script to read for public comment, which is the next item. Would you like me to read that one?
Yep, we're ready for that.
All right. Now is the time for our public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda, which we don't have one of, should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the commission secretary, that's me, to read your comments into the record. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you are calling in, press *9. So this is the time for those public comments. I will just note that I have not received any online speaker cards. Let me just take one last check of my email. No online speaker cards. I also do not see any raised hands among the attendees. So it doesn't look like there are any general public comments.
Okay, very good. We will close the public comment section of the agenda and move on to item 4, the disclosure of ex parte communications and identifications of conflict of interest. And I'll start with the ex parte communication. I met with Mark Stephens and Lauren regarding the marketplace redevelopment project parcels AB. Any other ex parte communications? Commissioner Dram.
Same here. So I had communication for the item 6.1.
Very good. Anyone else?
I did as well, Chair Keller.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and seeing none others, we will move on to our first public hearing.
Okay. As some of you may know, Senior Planner Miru Desai is on vacation, so I am filling in for her tonight. So I will be doing the staff presentation, and at this time I'm going to attempt to share my screen and show you the PowerPoint. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. Make it bigger. So this is a public hearing on the Emery Station Overland project. As I'm sure the commission recalls, the site is bounded by 63rd Street on the north, 62nd Street on the south, Overland Avenue on the west, and Hollow Street on the east. And this is a plan of that site, of that block. This is a 3.9 acre site, parcel, which is proposed to be divided into two parcels. The one that is outlined in red is the existing Hollow Street building. Although there are some bonus points that are proposed that relate to that building, it is not considered part of the project site. The project site is the two new buildings that you see on the left-hand side of this drawing. A proposed new lab building of 5 stories here, and then a proposed new parking garage, which would be on 63rd Street, tucked behind the Hollow Street building. By way of background, the Planning Commission first held a study session on this project on April 24th last year. The Council then held a study session on July 20th last year because the applicant proposed to use the flexible community benefit, and that would trigger City Council approval of the entire project. And then on November 16th, the Council had a follow-up study session on that aspect of the project and concluded that they would entertain using the flexible community benefit. Therefore, the entire project is now subject to City Council approval, and they did also review the entire project on November 16th. On March 7th, the BPAC reviewed the project. On March 24th, the Planning Commission had a second study session, and on April 4th, the BPAC reviewed the project again. The City Council had a third study session on April 5th, and tonight we are at the Planning Commission public hearing on the project. The project is scheduled to be considered for approval at a public hearing by the City Council on July 5th. So there are existing buildings on the site, the one-story warehouse buildings that will be demolished, and in their place will be built a 5-story, 80-foot tall, 300,000 square foot research and development building and a new 55-foot tall parking garage for 496 parking spaces. This is a site plan of the proposal. The new lab building is on the left. The blue space is tenant space. The orange kind of color space is common circulation space. The gray here is back of house. Loading docks, transformer rooms, and things like that. And then on the right over here is the proposed parking garage. The heavy green line represents a mid-block path that would be built through the site for pedestrians and bicycles between 62nd and 63rd Street. And the heavy dashed line represents a so-called art walk that would be for pedestrians and would wrap around the backside of the parking garage between the parking garage and the Hollow Street building. These smaller green arrows down here represent pedestrian access to the courtyard off of 62nd Street, and then these red arrows represent vehicular access. These three are the loading docks, and these two here represent vehicular access into the parking garage. This is the roof plan of the project, and I would note that the plans do show green roofs and solar panels on the existing building. That is not considered part of the project. Those are just shown here for illustrative purposes. This is a section through a section cut east and west and looking to the north with the lab building on the left side and the parking garage on the right side. And this is the mid-block path here between the two. And then these are two sections taken north-south looking towards the east. The one on top is the lab building, and the one on the bottom is the parking structure on the left side and the existing Hollow Street building on the right side. And you can see the art walk here between the two, and the parking structure does have a couple of levels below grade. These are some renderings. The proposed building looking north on Horton Street, and this little picture over here on the right is what that looks like today. This is the parking structure on 63rd Street, and the picture on the right, again, is what that looks like today. This is a site plan showing the removal of 18 street trees, of which 2 are on 63rd Street, 3 are on Overland Avenue, and 13 are on 62nd Street. This requires a tree removal permit from the Planning Commission, which is a separate action from the use permit and design review for the project, and that is before you tonight. The tree removal permit is not considered by the City Council. It is only considered by the Planning Commission. And the value of these trees to be removed has been determined by the city arborist as $146,000. This is a landscape plan of the new project, and as it shows, there will be 27 new street trees planted. So the conditions of approval pursuant to the Urban Forestry Ordinance require that the trees removed be replaced, and also that the replacement fee be paid equal to the value of the trees. And so that's what the conditions include. This shows the proposed courtyard on off of 62nd Street, the perimeter landscaping along Overland Avenue and 63rd Street, and the mid-block path here. I would note that the northern half of that path does not have any vegetation on it because it needs to be kept clear as a fire lane. However, the southern part of it still has some vegetation, and the northern part would have decorative pavers or some kind of special treatment. It wouldn't just be a bare concrete surface. And then this also illustrates the landscaping of the art walk. Again, the stuff that is shown here on the roof of the existing building is just for illustration purposes. That's not part of the project. In terms of conformity to the planning regulations, the general plan land use designation here is office technology with a transit hub overlay, and the zoning is also office technology, OT, with a transit hub TH overlay zone. And that has implications for the parking requirements. The use is considered research and development, and that use is permitted by right in the OT base zone. However, the project does still need a conditional use permit for several things, including development bonuses and parking over the maximum, as well as design review. The floor area ratio here, the base is 2.0, and with a bonus that can go up to 4.0. The proposed project calculates to an FAR of 2.6, which is a little bit over the 2.0 base. Therefore, it will require 30 bonus points for floor area ratio. For height, this is a little bit complicated. The site is divided by two different height zones. The eastern part of it has a base height of 30 feet and a bonus height of 55 feet. And the western portion, where the new lab building would be, has a base height of 50 feet and a bonus height of 100 feet. The parking structure is proposed to be 55 feet tall, and it is in the part of the site that has a maximum bonus height of 55 feet, and therefore that triggers 100 bonus points. The R&D building is 80 feet tall in a area of the site that allows up to 100 feet with a bonus. So 60 bonus points would be needed for that. However, the way our bonus system works is we look at all the different aspects of the project, calculate how many bonus points are needed for each of the various aspects, and then the total bonus points that the project needs is the greatest of those. And in this case, that's 100 points for the height of the garage. For those bonus points, 50 of them must be earned by providing affordable housing, and the other 50 must be earned by providing community benefits. As a non-residential project, obviously there will be no residential units in the project, so there won't be affordable units, and the way they earn the bonus points for affordable housing is by paying basically a double of the normal affordable housing impact fee. So for example, the current fee is $4.83 a square foot, and so that would be doubled to $9.66 a square foot, which calculates to about $2.9 million. That's today. The actual fee will be whatever the affordable housing development impact fee is at the time that the building permit is issued. So for the other 50 bonus points, the other community benefit points, possible categories for that include public open space, zero net energy, public improvements, utility undergrounding, a contribution to the city small business fund, and the undefined flexible community benefit. The proposal here is to earn 20 of those bonus points by the provision of additional public open space, and the other 30 would be from the flexible community benefit category, and that would be earned by converting 10 of the existing 41 live-work units in the Hollis Street building to below market rate units. I believe we went over this in some detail at your last study session, so I won't go back over that today. In terms of the other 20 points for public open space, this diagram, I realize it's a little bit complicated, but the project has open space requirements that must be met, including community open space or common open space rather, for the project itself, which is available to the project tenants, as well as privately owned public open space, or POPOs. So that's just a base requirement. And the light green shows the area of the site that we've been designated for the required open space. This dashed line in the middle of the courtyard represents the area that would be designated as POPOs, or that would satisfy the POPOs requirement, I should say. The other light green space, some of which is, actually all of which is open to the public, would constitute the common open space required by the project. The other dark green space here in the mid-block pathway and this portion of the courtyard is extra. It's beyond what is required. And in order to get 20 bonus points, they would have to provide 5% of the site area as public open space. The dark green here adds up to 7% of the site area. So they have met the requirement for 20 bonus points for public open space. So as I said, at the November 16th study session, the council was presented with the terms for the BMR live work units at the Hollis Street building for very low and low income housing. 3 of the units will be for very low income and 7 will be for low income. That's a total of 10 units. These are calculated to have a value of about 4.92 million, which is about 3% of the construction valuation of the project. And the way the system works, you get 10 bonus points for every 1% of construction value, so 3% is equal to 30 bonus points. The City Council indicated that they were satisfied with this proposal at their November 16th study session. Now, considering vehicular parking, typically research and development buildings need space for lab space and office, kind of on a 50-50 basis. And we've used that criteria for other such projects. That results in an estimated parking demand of 580 spaces. However, as I previously mentioned, it's in the transit hub overlay, which reduces all parking calculations by 50%, and the minimum is then 0. So the maximum parking that would be permitted, and the calculation is a little bit complicated because it also takes into account the parking estimated demand for the existing Hollis Street building, even though I indicated previously that that's not considered part of the project. Its parking is currently on the project site, so that parking needs to be replaced. And to calculating the parking for the Hollis Street building and the R&D building comes up to a maximum, or estimated parking demand of 374 spaces. The maximum allowed is 10% more than that, or 411. And that is after taking the 50% deduction from the transit hub overlay. They're proposing a 496 space garage, of which 68 would be dedicated to the existing uses in the Hollis building. And therefore, because it's providing more parking than the maximum allowed by our code, they will need a conditional use permit for that. The 2 findings that must be made to approve that are that the applicant has demonstrated that the parking is required for the anticipated demand of the proposed project, and that the provision of parking over the maximum will not result in an overdependence on automobiles and will not adversely affect transit, bicycle, or pedestrian access to the site or adjacent uses. The applicant has submitted a parking analysis, and that was peer-reviewed by our consultant, Fair & Peers. They both reached the same conclusion, that the project would generate more parking demand than the proposed parking supply. The applicant is also proposing various pedestrian and bicycle improvements to the site, which I'll get to in a second. Now, considering the bicycle parking requirement, it's 1 long-term space and 1 short-term space for every 10 parking spaces indicated as the estimated parking demand. In this case, it's not reduced by 50% because we're trying to encourage alternative transportation modes such as bicycles. And since the estimated parking demand is 580 spaces, that equates to 58 long-term and 58 short-term spaces. And the proposal is to provide 58 short-term spaces near the plaza and along the mid-block path, and 58 long-term spaces inside the building, so the project does meet the city's bicycle parking requirements. I already discussed the open space. This is just a recap of that, so I won't go over that again. These are the pedestrian and bicycle enhancements that the applicant is proposing. They would include vertical curbs in place of those plastic bollards that are now along Horton Street from Powell Street up to 52nd Street to separate the bike lanes from the vehicular traffic. Then there would be a two-way cycle track on 52nd Street and on Overland, on the north side of 62nd, on the east side of Overland around the project. And then this block between 63rd and 64th Street would be closed for a so-called village green open space. It would be closed to vehicular traffic, but it would still be open to emergency vehicles and bicycles and pedestrians. The applicant's proposal is for one-way circulation around the site this way. We believe that could be problematic, and so our conditions of approval suggest that this should be two-way if possible, and that is something to be further studied as the project as the construction drawings are developed. This is showing where that village green would go between 64th and 63rd Street. And this is a conceptual diagram of what that would look like with enhanced planting buffer, and existing paving would remain here, but there would be some kind of chalk art or something like that. And then pedestrians and bicycles, or bicycles could come through here, and then pedestrians would come along the side here. The Fair and Piers transportation assessment included a number of site-specific recommendations for the project, as it typically does. And this diagram illustrates all of those recommendations. I won't go over them. There are quite a few, but they are all captured in the recommended conditions of approval for the project. Concerning environmental review, traffic report was conducted for the project, and on the basis of it, the staff has determined that the project qualifies for an exemption under the so-called infill exemption at CEQA guideline section 15332. The traffic report concluded that there would not be major impacts as a result of the project, but as I said, it did include a number of recommendations for site circulation, loading, and parking that are incorporated as conditions of approval. And the staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission approve this project subject to the conditions of approval that are attached to your staff report. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Charlie. Good job. If everyone could come back on camera, and if you could let me know if there are any questions of staff in the presentation. Okay, Commissioner Simons.
Thanks, Chair Keller. I have two questions. Can we bring up the diagram with the open space popos slide? Or I guess you can just answer, Charlie. Does the project qualify without those very marginal slivers on the northeast corner of the property on Hollis? I just don't know what benefit that provides the community. It seems like very...
That was supposed to have been removed from the drawing. That is not included in the, it's not the popos. That's okay. For the community benefit bonus points. The popos is a small area in the middle of the plaza. But that area you're talking about was shown in dark green, proposed for bonus points, but they don't need that space still to qualify for the 20 bonus points. So that's not counted, and it's also not part of the project site.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And then my other question is, so who would maintain the village green? I like open space, so I just want to hear more about that vision. Are they paying for that, or are we paying for that?
That is something that we will have to work out with the applicant. I believe there's a condition of approval regarding that, which I can look up if you'll bear with me, but Miru would have that off the top of her head, but I'm afraid I don't. So if I can get back to you on that.
So Charlie, normally isn't it that the developer will install it and then the city does ongoing maintenance?
I think that's most likely.
And that's usually the typical way.
But I'll look that up during the applicant presentation and let you know.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Chafe.
Thank you, Chair Keller. Is now a good time to ask a question about condition of approval?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Great. Okay, so I was wondering if we could look at 2G, and I forgot to write down the first part of it. It has to do with some of the bicycle improvements. So I think it's probably under the transportation part, and it has to do with, let me just see if I can find it while we're talking as well. And
are you able to bring that slide up, Charlie, that shows the bicycle and pedestrian improvements?
Oh, is that what your question is about, Commissioner Chafe?
Yeah, it's just, it was one of the conditions of approval was written in a way that didn't seem very certain to me, and I wanted to make sure I understood what was actually going to happen as a result of it.
So let me see.
Sorry, I tried to write down the page numbers and I failed to do so for this one.
Talking about this one?
Can you close your side panel and make the screen larger?
Yeah, I was just want to make sure we were on the right slide. Where did it go? What just happened?
Oh God, I know it was. We'll just leave it.
Oh, I
Okay.
see what happened. Yeah, okay, now go.
Yeah, it was, okay, so I think it is about the two-way action that you were talking about, exactly. So it's on page 155 of the PDF. And my question is basically, like, what is being committed to at this point, and what are the range of possible outcomes as a result of the conditions of approval as they're written now?
You know, let me see if he's here. I'm going to ask Mohammed Alawi, our Public Works Director, to respond to that.
Thank you.
Let me just see, let me stop sharing here. Is Mohammed Alawi's on the attendee side? What's he doing there? Let me promote him so he can. Right. Mohammed, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Good. Can you respond to Commissioner Chase's question?
Yes, regarding the direction of traffic along the one block of Overland between 67 and 63rd, correct? So what's happening with this project is that we've gotten a lot of different conditions of approval related to pedestrian and bicycle facilities. The way that they've come forth are piecemeal, but the challenge is that they all need to work together, right? And the key to that is really studying it first and then coming up with the final product. In terms of our understanding of council policy and direction based on the discussions we've heard, the two-way cycle track is a paramount priority. That sits sort of at the top of the pyramid in terms of our goals. With that, we have our pedestrian and bicycle safety in addition to that, right? Now, because they extend, it is now current, the proposal is to extend it all the way to 65th, right? It depends, and I'm going beyond your initial question, the scope of your initial question, to get to your question, so kindly bear with me. So we need to figure out the signal operations at 65th and Overland as the two-way cycle track displaces one direction of traffic, right? As you displace that one direction of traffic, we need to see, first of all, what that does to the signal operations. As it is right now at that signal, the cycle length is already very long, and as a result, compliance for bicycles and pedestrians isn't all that high as they're waiting for the very long signal because of the interaction with the railroad. So that will determine which side of the road the two-way cycle track is on, right? So that, and then once you pin it at the top, that then has the ripple effect of, we don't want the cyclists to be changing their alignment midstream, anywhere between 62nd and 65th. We want them to remain on whichever side that the analysis determines that they should be on. So we need the study for that reason. Now, getting back to your original question, we then have the development, right, on 62nd. So, and we have the FedEx facility directly across the street. Those two facilities have, in terms of the direction of traffic that best serves them, they oppose each other, right? And so if you pick a one-way direction for the outlet, whether that is northbound or southbound, it will then trigger the need for a U-turn for whichever direction is not preferred, right? Now, we need a study to know whether we have room for a U-turn in the first place, right? So there's a whole bunch of if-then statements. If we do not have, after the project is built, room for Amazon and FedEx trucks, now usually our design vehicle is an SU-30. We don't design for large truck trailers because that's not feasible. But that's sort of the median moderate ground that we use for design. If we don't have room for a U-turn, we have a problem. And we have to pick one direction. And once we pick one direction, we disadvantage the other, and we create the problem. So for example, if we pick southbound, we're disadvantaging the people who would be using the loading zone and the ADA access directly in front of the development site. And then the opposite is true. If we pick northbound, then we're disadvantaging, the FedEx vehicles possibly, right? So it's difficult to do all of this analysis. We're basically looking at several trajectories, anticipating possible issues that need to be resolved in the future, and we want the space to do the analysis. In the event that we are not able to resolve that, for picking one direction of the resolving either northbound or southbound for that one segment, then we did do an initial dimension check, and there is enough space if you remove the dirt median that is to the western side of the street for that block segment to actually fit everything. So we don't actually know what the outcome will be, and we really need the space and time, not an excessive amount of time, but the time to do the analysis and come up with a result.
Thank you so much for that very thorough explanation. That makes a lot of sense. I think I can save this for the comments, but I basically just wanted to see if there was anything that might be taken off of the table as a result of that study. So thank you. And then if you don't mind, could you also talk to H, which is the next one, which is around designing a two-way cycle track between 64th and 65th. So I think that you've already covered that, right? That's basically the same study. They're related to each other. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Sorry, Chair Kelly, let me just see if I had any other quick questions.
No apology needed.
And then I also wanted to see if recommendation 9 from Fairs and Piers had been incorporated into the conditions of approval. And this is the one about making sure that short-term bicycle parking is visible from the street. I didn't, on a quick search, I didn't see it mentioned in the conditions of approval. Maybe it's implied more than anything else, but I was wondering if you had any reactions to that question.
I can respond to that. The condition, let's see, where is it? It's on page 21 of the conditions, so it would be Roman numeral 6A1, little b, little I, 58 short-term bicycle parking spaces in visible locations near entrances and plazas in the form of inverted U, bike racks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Perfect.
That's where it addresses that.
Okay, good, thank you. And then a question that came up for me, and this, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I know that there are a series of city-approved street trees. I saw in some of the recommendations in the plans that we have that They're those, I think they're called Marina strawberry trees. They're like, they make these little like reddish fruits. And so my question is whether there are any edible fruit trees that are approved by the city of Emeryville to be planted as a street tree.
Well, let me say we do not have a list of approved street trees as far as I'm aware. And the objective standards exercise that we're working on, that you may recall the commission had a study session on a while back, a list of city street trees is one of the things that we hope to develop as part of those objective standards, so that we can tell developers who are proposing SB 35 projects over which we have no discretion, you must use one of these trees. And we intend to have that list hopefully vetted by the city arborist and adopted by Public Works, but we're not there yet. So at this point, I can't tell you what the street trees are. They would be developed as part of the construction drawing.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's the end of my questions for now, Chair Keller.
Thank you very much. Those were all very good and helpful for all of us, I think.
Chair Keller, I do have an answer to the question about maintenance that was asked. This is condition, let me see, it's on page 19. I don't know what the main section is, but it's D3. Maintenance of installed infrastructure improvements in public right-of-way. Applicant, its successors, and assigns shall maintain in perpetuity the above-ground improvements within the public right-of-way on Overland Avenue between 63rd and 64th Streets, and site frontage between the face of curb and the property lines, not including city Lubec poles. So it's on the applicant to maintain that.
Thanks, Charlie.
And what is our method if we find that it's not being maintained? Do we then go in and repair and do the maintenance and charge back the applicant?
I think I would defer to the Public Works Director to respond to that. I'm not really sure what our mechanism is for doing that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that being an issue within the city. If it is, that probably would be a discussion with the city attorney, to be honest with you, and we would plot the appropriate course of action from there. Okay. But what you stated is, I would expect, logical and likely.
Okay. And Chris, do you think that would be the path we would need to take if we found that the person responsible for maintaining it wasn't, and we needed to do some repairs, that we would do the repair and go back there, or would we have to wait for them to do the work?
I'd have to check on, your code before I answer that fully for you, and I can kind of look at it right now while we talk. But that sounds like the right path to me.
I'm just concerned because this is going to be, a passageway that emergency vehicles will use, let alone bicycles and stuff. So if a pothole develops in a way, the bike lane, and it's not getting repaired, I'd like to know what, before we go approving this idea, what our mechanisms are to make sure that that hazard gets corrected as soon as possible.
Let me take a look at something real quick, and I'll get back to you in a few minutes.
That sounds fine. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I think we will move on to the applicant presentation.
Wait, bear with me for a second. I
Sure.
will promote them to panel. Normally I would be doing this while Vera was making her presentation.
You're the juggler tonight.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, I did it already.
Hand raised, he can start talking as soon as he joins the panel, which should be momentarily. There he is. All right, Wareham team, take it away.
Great. I will go ahead and share my screen. Everybody see it okay?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. We appreciate this opportunity to review and discuss the 1550 Emery Station project. I'm Brandon Northart from Urban Planning Partners, and I've been working with Wareham Development on this effort. During the past year, we've had the chance to respond to your comments and concerns, and are really excited to show you what we've had a chance to do since then. We believe that the refinements have produced a really strong addition to the Emory Station campus and to the biotech and life sciences economy in Emeryville, along with providing some pretty significant public community benefits. We look forward to hearing the Commission's recommendations to the City Council tonight. For tonight's meeting, we have Rich Robbins and Jeffrey Sears from Wareham Development, the project developer, myself, Brandon Northart from Urban Planning Partners, just helping out Wareham get through the entitlements process, and then we also have Matthew Malones from Perkins & Will representing the architecture team. This chronology, Charlie already kind of laid out, but just to go over it one more time is, this is where we've been the past year or so, and as you can see, we've had a lot of opportunity for public and city review. The comments we've received have provided some really important insight that's enabled us to make some pretty significant changes over the lifespan of the project. And I think this list gives you a really good sense of the evolution of the project. And as you can see, we've done some extensive public outreach and tried to make the planning process with the Planning Commission and City Council as collaborative as possible. We're now here in front of the Planning Commission for the third time and planning to go to the City Council for the fourth time. And tonight we're finally ready for the Planning Commission's action. Project objectives. From the beginning stages, Wareham identified several mutual project objectives. The most important is retaining the Hollis Street building, which has always been an extremely important component to the project. And we wanted to complement the new building as well. The longstanding live-work community that resides there is a creative hub, and we really want to strengthen it as a result of the project through its renovation and other physical improvements, but most importantly, through the creation of 10 new deed-restricted affordable housing units. We highlight this because realistically, we could have redeveloped the entire block, but we really wanted to go the difficult route here because we know how important these existing units are and how vital affordable housing opportunities, especially unique ones like this, are to the Bay Area and to Emeryville. We also want to contribute to the thriving bioscience economy in Emeryville, to provide community benefits in the form of affordable housing, as well as off-site public improvements to pedestrian and bicycle network that will increase sustainability and livability in Emeryville, to extend the Emory Station campus with a new lab and office building, and enhance the North Hollis area. In a similar vein, we believe the project will strengthen several linkages, including to historic and future Emeryville, to the existing live-work community through the creation of new affordable units for artists, entrepreneurs, and makers in a zone that doesn't really require it, and to the existing Emory Station Life Science campus, and to Emeryville's bike and pedestrian network. Charlie has presented a really good overview of the major project components, so I'll only briefly highlight some of the information, though I do want to make a small correction. In our eyes, we believe that the green roof, solar array, and the Hollis Street building are really actually a part of this project. As I've kind of highlighted, it's a really important component, and it's not illustrative in our eyes. In regards to context, the red outline shows the greater Emory Station campus. The orange arrow shows the Horton Street spine with the project site at the intersection of Horton and 62nd. You can see the project site near the top part of the map with the new building sited at the western portion and the retained Hollis Street building and parking garage on the eastern portion. As mentioned before, but now on display, the new building will provide a continuation of the campus along with a new set of public improvements and access points. The project is the culmination of a conscious 40-year biotech vision at the Emory Station campus, including various biotech buildings, Heritage Square, and the Amtrak station. A key principle for Wareham has been to think holistically about the superblock through the connection between the old and new Emeryville. As you can see through the mix of uses, the project will bring the old to bear with not only housing, but also an expansion of life science uses that the Emory Station campus is well known for. Here you can see an aerial view that shows the context of the project within the block, including the proposed lab and office building with a prominent central courtyard, the right-of-way improvements, including a new pedestrian cut-through between 62nd and 63rd Streets, a new solar array on the Hollis Street building, and the various green roof components on all of the structures. And I just also wanted to highlight how important scale is to the project's design. As you can see, the new building is in scale with the surrounding neighborhood and existing buildings. And I want to highlight that this is intentional, and we could have gone up to 100 feet, but we decided not to because we really wanted to keep the project within scale at 80 feet. So we've gone over it before and Charlie highlighted, but just to quickly reiterate, during the past year, we've worked with the public, the Planning Commission, City Council, and city staff to really create what we think is a better project. And as you're all aware, since the first time we presented to the Commission back in April 2021, we've incorporated significant changes to the project, including opening up the mid-block passage, establishing an affordable housing plan, incorporating sustainability features such as green roofs and solar arrays, expanding materially safe bike lanes from Powell to 65th, and our other off-site improvements. And all of your recommendations have really made this project a better one. And since the last time we saw you, we know that you wanted more details on how we plan to make all the various project elements, pedestrian and bike improvements, and infrastructure work. And the main two comments that we heard were, one, to address the potential pedestrian conflicts with vehicles and bicycles along 62nd and Overland, and two, to assure that bike pathways are properly maintained and kept free of litter and leaves. To address those concerns, we've worked collaboratively and extensively with planning, public works, housing, and transportation, as you heard from Mohabin, to formulate these conditions of approval. And we thought we've really taken a really forward-thinking approach in finding some really great bike and pedestrian improvements. And as you can see, that these conditions here that we've all agreed upon, including signal modifications, adding stop signs, completing a bike, pedestrian, and ADA traffic study, and providing the city with a specific mini street sweeper for bike lanes. As most of you are all aware, we are technically 85 spaces over what would be allowed for parking because of the project's location within the transit hub overlay, which I'll kind of touch on in my next slide. But based on the council's comments, we've incorporated these major offsite and pedestrian public improvements, which we think will strengthen the city's network and complement the existing campus-wide bicycle facilities such as bike storage pods, repair stations, bike racks for cargo bikes. And in addition, Wareham will follow through on a suggestion from BPAC to include chargers for electric bicycles. And I also just want to reiterate that these improvements are a direct result of our need for the 85 spaces, and we feel that these improvements are a worthwhile trade-off and really a win-win for everybody. So the transit hub overlay, Wareham's biggest dilemma has been dealing with the overlay in the area, kind of shown in the lavender here, which is centered around the Amtrak station. Projects within the zone have to automatically reduce all of their parking maximums by 50% with the objective of encouraging and incentivizing transit use. But important consideration is the biotech cluster here at the Emory Station campus. Amtrak's reach misses a really important and huge population of the people who work here in the biotech and life science sector, but they live in the peninsula, they live in the eastern counties in the Bay Area, they live in the northern suburban areas. And having Amtrak in Capital Corridor is great, but it really only can do so much in diverting cars off the road. It helps, but its service area is pretty limited. And the problem with Amtrak in Capital Corridor is it's just not on the same level of a major commuter rail like BART is. And the station helps, and the site's proximity to other services reduce parking need, but the station just doesn't have the service frequencies and direct BART and bus connections necessary to really reduce parking demand enough to really justify and achieve the transit overlay's goals. And realistically, it just doesn't. So to complement this, we completed a parking study, as Charlie described, for the project, which confirmed that our parking is adequate. We had over 500 employees, roughly around 11% of all the employees working at the Emory Station campus right now, respond to our survey and confirm, based on anticipated employee count for our project, that there would be a demand of over 800 spaces. Even if you use the ITE parking generation standard, which is the industry standard for parking generation, the parking would still be at 548 spaces. And lastly, as indicated in the staff report, Farron Peers conducted an independent peer review of our parking study and agreed that the project's parking demand would be much greater than our proposed supply. Taking this into account, the project's 496 parking spaces is actually quite an aggressive reduction over its need. but we think it can be justified through TDM techniques and other offsite improvements. And just to reiterate what the slide says, if the project were located 1 block to the north, or if it were located just outside the overlay zone, our proposed parking would be allowed to be up to 580 spaces, which is 84 more than what we're proposing. So here's a list of the off-site improvements that I've mentioned quite a few times, but just provide some specifics. Again, I know Charlie touched on, so hopefully I'll go through these pretty quickly. Picking up on the theme that improvements for pedestrian and bicycles were an important part of transit-oriented policies, the council focused on off-site public improvements to enhance the area's access and encourage alternative commutes in exchange for our additional parking. This slide shows what elements have been mutually agreed upon. The yellow lines here show the continuous bicycle lanes that will be protected by concrete curbs. They'll run along both sides of Horton Street and go from Powell to 62nd. The orange line here shows a two-way protected bicycle path that will run along the north side of 62nd and extend from Hollis to Overland and then continuing all the way up until 65th. And I also just wanted to make a correction that I saw Charlie's graphic only shows it going up to 63rd, but it does indeed go up to 65th. As shown here. The white arrow shows the restricted one-way vehicle traffic, and the green and blue strip on Overland shows where we plan to close off the block to through traffic to create new open space opportunities, which I'll touch on in the next slide. And of course, we also have other traffic calming features such as stop signs and crosswalks that will be incorporated. And these improvements are not just improvements to our site, they really cover a huge chunk of the city and are intended to be a benefit for everyone in Emeryville. We're really trying to pick up with where biomed improvements drop off and go all the way up to 65th, way past our project site. And in total, the project is providing almost a mile's worth of bike and pedestrian improvements. And just to reiterate one more time, if the project had 85 less spaces, was consistent with the parking maximum, or if it was located outside the transit hub overlay, the improvements you see here just would probably not be a part of this proposal. And for this slide, I'm going to hand it over to Matt Malone, our landscape attorney from Perkins & Will, who will explain this slide in more detail.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Malone, and I'm a landscape architect with Perkins & Will. Here you can see our concept design for the Overland Avenue Linear Park, which closes Overland Avenue to through traffic between 63rd and 64th Street, just north of our project site. For reference, the intersection of Overland Avenue and 63rd is on the right-hand side of this plan, while the intersection of Overland and 64th is on the left. The space will be designed to allow for continued use for emergency vehicle traffic, which we provided by maintaining a generous 20-foot throughway that we are proposing as an art-filled bike and pedestrian path, taking cues from events such as the San Rafael Annual Chalk Art Festival and street murals nationwide that celebrate local communities and artisans. This is a place where we envision the community coming together to engage and inform the artistic expression of the space and really make it their own. In addition to the community art focus, we aim to create a comfortable place for people to hang out. We're proposing a number of large shade trees on both sides of the street and an enhanced planting buffer to help soften the space. We've also located an activity zone along the east side of the street, along the top part of the page here, where we envision a playful collection of parklet-inspired seating areas with integrated planters, benches, bike parking, and trellises. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Matt. In closing, we feel that the project will be a significant new asset to Emeryville that's going to provide so many public benefits in the form of new open spaces and enhanced pedestrian and bicycle network. It contributes to Emeryville's biotech and life sciences cluster. It adds 10 extremely unique, deed-restricted, affordable live-work units, and it preserves 31 market rate units. So I just want to thank you all for your time and the effort that you put into the project so far this past year. We look forward to the Commission's actions as we move forward to the City Council. Thank you so much.
Very good, thank you very much. So before we let the applicant go, is there any questions from the Commission of the applicant? Okay, Commissioner Chafe.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. This is really minor, but in one of the drawings that was provided to us, there was a picture of the art walk, and up in the upper right corner, it said will be open approximately 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., or I think it said actually closed approximately 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. In the conditions of approval, it seems to state pretty clearly that those are the hours, and I just wanted to have confirmation from the applicant team that they agree with that.
Yeah, we will we'll comply with the standard the conditions of approval. I think that's just probably something that was just left over.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I just have one question for clarification, just so that everyone knows, the public in general, that does Wareham Property still own the site that FedEx is on?
I might leave this one to Jeff or Rich, but I'm pretty sure that they do.
Yeah, this is Jeff Sears. The answer is yes, we do.
Okay. So the bike improvements that you're doing there is just, it's part of an enhancement to your property as well, and not just, I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, Stephen,
I'm not finished. I just want to say that it was implied that the benefits for the project stop at this new project site, but it does actually continue a block beyond that for Wareham as well as the city. But I just wanted to make sure that the public knew where the property lines existed and when they ended. So that answers my question. Thank you. So if there are no more questions of the applicant from the commission, we will move on to public comment.
Thank you again.
Thank you. And
So this is a public hearing, so you need to open the public hearing, please.
that's where we were going.
Okay, sorry.
So we are opening the meeting to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, you have 3 minutes, and either submit a speaker card, or if you're in the room, raise your hand, and Director Bryant will call upon you. Do we have any speaker cards?
I do not have any online speaker cards. I've just double checked my email. I've not received any online speaker cards for this item. As of right now, I do not see any raised hands among the attendees. It does not appear that anybody wishes to speak at this public hearing.
Okay, and nothing in the email. Did you say you checked that again?
Right, I've checked it several times.
Okay, very good. Then we will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission. And Charlie, do we want to demote the applicants this time or leave them on?
Well, I would say that's up to you. Generally, we would leave them on for your deliberations.
Okay.
In case you have any further questions of them, or
sounds good.
They wish to add anything.
All righty, very good. So shall I just call on commissioners to see who would like to comment on this to start with? We can start with Commissioner Zebko.
Chair Keller, if it's okay, I'll just answer your question real quick so you have the information at the start and then you guys can deliberate.
Oh, thank you.
Sure, yeah. So I think you were kind of referring to what happens if they don't comply with the conditions of approval that require the ongoing maintenance. And my basic answer to that question is if they're not complying with the condition of approval, then the city would have the right to begin the process of reviewing and up to, revoking the permit. So their conditional use permits would be in jeopardy if they're not complying with the conditions of approval. So that could be one, method of ensuring compliance with the conditions. If there is a downed tree or some kind of immediate emergency, obviously fire and public works would respond or something like that, but otherwise that would be the path that the city would take.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Okay, Commissioner Zebko.
I have no further comments. I love how this is progressing. Thank you.
Very good. And Commissioner Chafe?
Thank you. So I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for all the bike and pedestrian improvements that you've outlined. I think that there are quite a few of them, and they seem to be thoughtfully responding to a lot of the comments that were made, both by the Planning Commission and then also by the BPAC committee. In terms of the closure of overland between 63rd and 64th, I'm very much in favor of this, and I think that the opportunities for programming are really great. I would encourage the applicant's team to look at a few things. One would be planting edible trees along the area, as I think that's something that might be kind of a playful and useful draw to the area, and something that people could look forward to coming to that segment to check out. Another thing is that, speaking on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Committee, we've had a lot of discussions about bringing nature-based play into Emeryville, especially in smaller spaces where there's not room for a full park. And so that's something else that you might also want to consider along the sides. That could be as simple as having, I think they're called tree cookies. It's like a slice of wood basically that's movable. So people can kind of pick them up, move them around, interact with them. You can also have like simple balancing objects. And if there's concerns about permanency, then you can pick things that are able to be replaced over time. In terms of the conditions of approval, very much in favor of the one around the street sweeper. I think that's a great addition. And then I had one recommendation, which is around condition of approval 7.15, which is, I think it's around a sign for popos. And I think right now there's one required, like a 2-foot by 2-foot sign that's required to designate that there is a popos in the project. Because the project is approachable from 2 different blocks, I was thinking that it could be useful to have 2 of those signs, one on either side of the project, to make passerbys aware that there is public open space available. I know that's been an issue with wayfinding in the city in general for other projects. I think that is basically it. I did have one question more than anything else, just to mention it here. In one of the drawings for the art walk, it shows a bunch of like lanterns going across the top, and it's, in my mind, it's kind of a prominent feature in the drawings. My understanding is that a lot of that hasn't been designed yet. So, I just wanted to know whether that's something that we should expect to see in the future, or if that might be just kind of a, something in the drawing, and we might end up with something quite different in the future. But that's it for now. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. And Commissioner Dram.
So I really like this project. Thank you so much for the time that you put and the revision you make. And I don't have any other comments, and thank you so much.
Okay, very good. And Commissioner Simons.
Thanks, Chair Keller. I have a couple of comments about this. First, thank you so much for the direct pass-through. I think the commission all made very, very clear feedback about that. And it's so great to see that you figured out how to make that happen. I think that's going to make this project much better. And it's great to see our feedback reflected in the plans. I'm a little bit concerned about closing this block of overland. It seems like a somewhat desolate stretch that has to be left open for emergency access. I'm concerned that it's just not going to be that pleasant of a place to sit. And I hope you, the developer in the city, will work really, really hard. It's kind of loud and windy when the trains roll by, and I think it has great potential, but we're going to have to work really, really hard to make that happen. And I hope we do. And could I get quick clarification from someone about the number of affordable units that we're getting here? Does anybody?
Yes, it's 10 affordable units.
10. So I think, I would love for the city council to see if we can get, a couple more affordable units. I think it's, I assume this is a tens of millions of dollars project. Transitioning these into affordable units seems like a real opportunity to really push the developer. So I'd love to see the developer come to the city council a couple of weeks and say, hey, we're going to do 12 or 14. Every additional unit makes a really, really big difference. I don't know what each costs. What is it? $50,000 to put in a parking space. Costs $800,000 to build an affordable unit. Maybe we can do something where you match up those amounts of money, and we get a couple more. I have to think more through about how to do that. But that's something I can communicate to city council about. And anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to present and continuing to come back to us. Thanks.
Very good, thank you so much. So before I start my comments, what I think would best be for everyone's interest is I didn't hear any of the commission talk about the overage of the parking. I understand that they gave us a study, which is sometimes refuted. I have a 3-page comment I could make on this, and things that I could illustrate to why the study is not as solid as they proposed it to be, and how I feel primarily, more than anything, that by proving this, we're setting a precedent. that these minimums no longer count, that everyone could just come and hire a service to produce the results they want, give it to us, and we just rubber stamp it and say, go on. So if none of the commissioners believe that this 85 extra cars is a problem, I'll save everyone's time and not go through this. Because it doesn't seem like anyone's brought that up as a concern. And I don't know that what I have to say is necessarily going to convince you, let alone the city council. So if I could get just a feeling from the commissioners, if they feel that setting a precedent by approving these overages and setting a precedent of ongoing issues with other developers, because every developer that comes is going to use the same report and say, yeah, I need the same allowances. Because the complaints we get in town more than anything is traffic. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, you feel you need these spaces, we'll give them to you. And it's going to happen with every development that comes on here, and we're going to do nothing to curb the use of cars. And to their own thing, they did a 500 employee survey, and they said their demand is this. And the reason is because, and I could show you the Heritage parking garage, the one on Horton Street, is empty on the top. It is not used at all. But the thing is they can rent these places at higher amounts because people know that when they drive into our city, they're going to pull in and find a parking spot. And we all know that the only way to deter driving is to make it inconvenient. As inconvenient as taking public transit, as inconvenient as biking and walking. But as long as I can drive from, Hayward, and I know I'm going to pull in and have a spot in the garage, I'm going to drive. So, but it doesn't seem like anyone has a concern about that. So I could save everyone's time and, not even go into that. But Commissioner Simons?
Thanks, Chair Keller. I'm definitely concerned about that. I think this is a very tough issue for the city, and I'm potentially interested in, trading more affordable units for allowing this parking. And I'd love to see if the developer can chit chat with us about that, either city council or here. That seems like a reasonable thing to.
It seems reasonable, but this is going to council as is for approval.
Yep.
So they're not going to have that conversation. They've given us 10, and that's what we're going to get. So, but that's fine. Anyone else?
Chair Keller,
Commissioner Chase's hand, yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing this up. It's actually something I had in my notes that I forgot to mention is the specific thing on this that, the survey that was done had 11% response rate, which I think is more pertinent than the total number of responses. And it was called representative. So I did have some big questions about that I think feed into your concerns.
Chair Keller? I don't know if this is helpful to the commission, but we do have Catherine Tellez from Fair and Peers here tonight, and she oversaw the peer review study that the city commissioned to review the study that the applicant did. If you would like to hear from her, she is available.
Okay.
Would you like to?
No, not at this time.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Dram, how do you feel? Do you feel that by approving this with the overages is not setting a precedent and that it won't cause a problem for future development?
I think it will cause a problem, especially with our other projects we are discussing about the parkings. Yeah.
So, like I said, I have a 2.5 page. Go ahead, Commissioner Simons.
Thanks, Chair Keller. I think my better thoughts about this. I think really the issue to me is, I take Amtrak 6 times a year to go to the Capitol for something. And as an occasional Capitol Corridor unit user, I think like all of us, I recognize it as a public transit option is just not that great. And relying on Capitol, expecting employers to have their people take Capitol Corridor seems very ambitious to me and not realistic. And I think I would prefer at some future date to lower our overall parking maximums for the entire city. And I think it's slightly unfair that this project is, 1 block away from getting much more access when really Capitol Corridor is just not that great. I'd prefer to just blanket change the rules, but I think it's slightly unfair to punish them.
Okay, so to that, if we are to change our rules and they just come back and give us a report saying this is why we need this and we allow it, we've allowed it for one developer, we have changed the rules. And there is a border, whether it's our city limits or a particular area of the town, we've created these minimums and maximums for a reason. And as we choose to eliminate them for certain developers or applicants, we set a precedent that all someone has to do is pay a advisor to produce a report that is based on basically suburban examples and not urban examples. We end up with more cars, and we don't address our climate problem. We don't address our traffic problem. We don't address our health problem. But like I say, if it seems to me, reading what I've read of the city council, that they found that they could approve this, that they've decided that. And if I don't have the support of the commission to ask the city council to look more closely at this, then I don't see the need to waste everyone's time. So if I can just, and so what I'm hearing is that the four of the other council commission members feel that that's not an issue. So we will just entertain a motion if we're done with our deliberations.
Chair Keller, can I clarify what the options are that you're seeing right now to further discuss this?
Well, the option is I would give my thoughts that have been fully vetted and researched on why these 85 parking spaces are not important to the development as they say they are, and how detrimental they are to this development and our future development. But if it's something that, the commission, it's not only you that you have to convince, is a strong vote from us would ask the city council to look more serious at this. But if I don't get that support, the city council is going to do what they've already, pretty much decided they want to do. So it's no point in going through the action if it's going to result in the same thing.
It's like a cliffhanger now. I want to know what your findings are.
Well, a lot of it is what I showed at our special meeting for parking, that their current garages are not at maximum, even though they stated in their first meeting that they were at capacity when they never have been at capacity. They have 85 spaces on the top of the Heritage Garage parking structure that's right across the street from this garage that can handle any overflow if they need it. But it's creating this precedent that every developer is going to ask us to ignore our rules and our regulations because they're special and they have needs. So if we want to do that, and that's kind of the path we're taking, then I can't stand in the way of that. So at this point in time, I think we, can entertain a motion on what's before us. Go ahead, Chair, Commissioner Simons.
Chair Keller, yeah, I think we should, I guess this is going to the city council anyways, so this is really a moment for us to communicate around the parking stuff. And I think we should make a motion to decline to approve it or whatever over the parking maximums.
That would have, after my presentation, my suggestion would be
after we hear your great, well-researched presentation. Yeah.
we don't even have to hear it, because my recommendation is that we approve the project but do not exceed the 411 spaces. And if we're ready to entertain something, I'll make that motion that we can approve the project as submitted. Charlie, do we want to separate the tree removal from that, or do we want to go forward as a whole?
If you are going to bifurcate the approval of the use permit and design review and do something a little different there than what is the staff recommendation is, I would request that you do take a vote on the tree removal separately, because as I indicated, that does not go to the city council. That is only the planning commission's decision. And then it's contingent upon city council approval of the project. So if the council for some reason didn't approve the project, then the planning commission's approval of the tree removal permit would be moot. But it is important that we get a decision from the commission on the tree removal permit.
Okay. So can I make a motion that we approve the tree removal as proposed? And is there anyone wanting to second that?
I am sorry. So that was moved by Chair Keller and seconded by Commissioner Simons to approve the tree removal permit?
Correct.
Is that correct? Right. Are you ready to vote on that?
Yeah.
Commissioner Chafe?
Aye.
Commissioner Dram?
Aye.
Commissioner Gitzoni is absent. Commissioner Simons?
Aye.
Commissioner Zepko?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mendez is absent. Chair Keller.
Aye.
5 ayes, the tree removal permit is approved. I will note that there is, I believe, a 15-day appeal period for the tree removal permit.
Okay. So we could do one of two ways. I can make a motion that we approve the project with the condition that we do not allow in excess of the 411 spaces, or I could give you my presentation and then we can make a decision after that. Commissioner Simon, you're on mute.
I think, Chair Keller, given that I think this is your last Planning Commission meeting, I think we all deserve one more reminder about Emeryville's overparking situation. And I'd love to hear your presentation.
I second that.
Oh, darn, I was really hoping to get away from doing that. Okay, I'll give you my thoughts and feelings, and then from there, we can go on. So I have to start saying that what we do and what the City Council do in relation to this request will set precedent for all future developments. So I'm clearly stating that I'm in strong opposition to the City Council's assertion of the ability to make the permit findings for the proposed parking, and this is why. I believe the method and matrix used by the agencies hired to do the study, though current, are outdated and do not adequately reflect the needs for addressing our dire situation of climate change. Additionally, the technical memo from CH Consulting on page 30 of our staff report dated October 2021 states that all three methods resulted in parking demand numbers substantially greater than those presented by the city staff report. Here I call into question these reports' methodology. In my research, I've come across two separate sources that question the validity of parking demand studies and manuals, such as the ITE's 5th edition. In June of 2020, the City of Dallas held a meeting on their Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee. In their presentation, Technical Publications, Sources for Public Demand Studies, their presentation gave the following warnings: that parking requirements established solely through the use of this publication may not be appropriate for denser urban environments. And most of the data are derived from suburban developments with limited transit ridership. Another publication, an article in Access Magazine titled Roughly Right and Precisely Wrong by Donald Shroop, makes the assertion regarding two manuals published by the IT, their parking generation and trip generation. Paraphrasing from this article, Mr. Shroop makes the following comments. A close look at data showed that unwarranted trust in these precise but uncertain estimates of travel behavior can lead to bad transportation, parking, and land use policies. And urban planners who rely on these trip generation rates as guides when designing transit systems are therefore reinforcing automobile dependency. And that's what I want to stress here, is what we are doing is we are reinforcing automobile dependency. Continuing, Mr. Stroop says the ITE stamp of authority relieves planners from the obligation to think for themselves, that many planners recommended using parking generation rates as minimum parking requirements because they're the best data available. But that is not totally accurate, and I'll explain this a little bit later. At the end of the article, Mr. Stroop suggests that urban planners should recognize that even ITE data were accurate. Using them to set parking requirements will contribute to automobile dependency. And this fact is supported by Wareham's own admission in that survey we just discussed, that their building's tenants drive to work, which I will come back to, but my assertion is that people drive to work knowing there's ample parking available. And it is not until we make driving and parking more difficult that we'll see a reduction in driving into our city. But to provide the commission a more germane, local, and tangible evidence that this amount of parking is not needed, I'll provide some very recent information and data. On March 3rd of this year, the San Francisco Examiner published an article stating that the Bay Area has twice as many parking spots as people. The article was written about findings from a census of the region's parking supply. The article states that the census was conducted by Spur and the Minetta Transportation Institute, and that the report represents the most comprehensive look yet at the ubiquitous style of infrastructure and unintended consequences. that all of parking undermines public transit, worsens housing affordability, and stands in the way of environmental targets. The article goes on to quote Laura Tolkoff, the Transportation Policy Director at SPUR, one of the authors of the parking census, and her remarks are critically important for us to hear and understand. Laura said there is a disconnect between our progressive social and environmental values and how much land we actually devote to driving and storing cars. She goes on to say, it should become as no surprise that 2/3 of Bay Area residents drive alone to work and for most all their daily needs. A fact that is supported by figure 5 in CHS's consulting report. A collaborating source of data came from a 2007 study by San Francisco Metropolitan Transit Authority that found that the Bay Area has actually nearly 2 parking spaces per person. The census also found that 20% of the incorporated land in this region is devoted to driving and storing cars, and that there are approximately 2.4 parking spaces for every car in the Bay Area, meaning that we have 1.4 more parking spaces than we actually have cars to park in them. To quote the census report, in short, there is far more parking than we need. This excess has become an accepted part of the urban landscape and makes residents more likely to drive, increasing carbon emission, worsening climate impacts, air pollution and respiratory disease, rates of injury and death from collision, and traffic congestion. Having read this article and doing my own field research, it's my opinion that the request for more parking is simply to make it more attractive for potential tenants. There is no actual factual need for the amount of parking that's being requested, and as time goes by, the actual need should decrease or at the very least be discouraged. In relation to this, I want to address the issue that's always brought about public transit in BART on page 31, and as stated tonight of the staff report on the CHS consulting states that Amtrak does not provide commuter rail frequencies and lacks the destination access compared to BART. This is a common confusion. BART and Amtrak serve different needs and different commuters. Amtrak connects the greater Bay Area and the mega region like Sacramento, Vacaville, Vallejo, and San Jose. Emeryville is designed to make our connections to BART, so this assertion isn't valid. I believe the problem is property owners and employers do an adequate job in educating commuters. The CHS consulting report actually helps us support the direction in reducing parking on page 32 of the staff report, section 2.0, existing transportation uses, states employee travel patterns at the existing Emeryville campus are assessed to determine current employee travel. Habits as employee patterns the proposal are likely to be similar to the existing Emeryville station. So what they're telling us, everybody drives to this campus now in their existing building, and they're planned to do so. But this is exactly what we're trying to do, what limiting parking is about. It's designed to change these habits. Making parking more difficult will change habits. Providing an abundance of parking promotes driving, as illustrated in figure 5 on page 35 of our staff report, that over 66% of employees currently drive alone. We need to discourage this habit. So we, the Planning Commission and City Council, have a moral obligation to make developers do what they lack the courage and responsibility to do, and that is to uphold the city policy to limit the amount of parking allowed, thus hopefully decreasing the number of vehicles coming and going in our city. The bicycle improvements suggested are inadequate for removing vehicles from our streets, and reducing vehicles is paramount to achieving our many goals, such as the Climate Action Plan, the Sustainability Plan, and the Sustainable Transportation Plan. I'd just like to mention that all the sources I've used to illustrate my points have come from nonprofit or governmental organizations. Along with Transform and my own field investigations, this shows physical and tangible proof that the project areas, our city, and the entire Bay Area is overparked. And as a city, we have made the conscious decision to address this issue by limiting the amount of parking we allow in our city, and we have to stick to it. Remember, we're setting a precedent with this action. So I'd like to show you some tangible evidence that supports that we are currently overparked and that there is no physical need to exceed our current parking allowances. So as we looked at earlier, this is the Horton Street Garage, or often known as Heritage Parking Garage. And as you can see, this is at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. And
Chair Keller,
go ahead.
Are you intending to share your screen?
I am, and I forgot. Thank you.
All right.
I went right to that. Hopefully it'll be here. Let's see. Yes. Okay, how about that?
Yes.
So as you can see in this photograph, this is the Emery Station Horton Street Garage, or known as Heritage Garage. And as you can see, this is taken twice a day, 10 in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And this level, and not only this level, but as you can see on the far right here, this lower level here is absolutely empty. And as I sit at this table where I'm sitting now, I see this garage every day. I have for the past 2 years or more. And there has never been a car on that parking garage. So this constitutes about 85 spaces. So they can, and this is directly across the street from their proposed project. But it's not only them. I'm not picking on just them about this, but this is the garage over at Novartis, or Griffles. This is Griffles Garage. Again, this is an 8-story parking structure, and every place you can see, this lower deck and the upper deck, 10 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, is not used, and it never is. And this is the Avalon Apartments that would have been above the grocery store, but now it's above Upside Foods. And this is at 6 o'clock in the morning. And even the apartments is not using half of its spaces. And I could reaffirm that by my own building, which I had a study conducted in 2015, that we have a building of 586 units with 907 parking spaces. And we provide over 1.5 parking spaces per unit. And the study found that only 1.2 spaces were used. And that PPP is overparked by 23%. So we've been doing this since 1986. And everything that we've done recently, since I've been on the planning commission, has overparked and is not at all being used to its capacity. So I don't think 85 more spaces is going to make or break this project for the applicant. And I think it can make or break our ability to ask other developers to stay within our confines and our laws. So I do not support the assertion that they need these spaces. So that is my discussion. Any comments from the commission? No comments?
Thank you, Chair Keller, for doing so much thorough research and for bringing up really important issues.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So will we entertain a motion at this time? Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the project, but without the conditional use permit of the 85 extra spaces that they can only park 411 cars.
I'll second that.
Sorry, who was the second?
Commissioner Zupko?
Okay. Chair Keller, may I just interject that in order to do this, you are going to need to make some findings.
Yep.
And if you like, I can bring those up for you.
I have them, I could find them, and I could give you the findings on that.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to figure out where I put them.
These would be the two findings that I mentioned in the staff presentation.
Correct.
Regarding parking over the maximum.
Yeah, it's just.
They're on pages 138 and 139 of your packet.
Thank you, Christy.
I have that. I have some verbiage in which we could use. It's just my problem in finding it. Darn. Well, that's very frustrating. Well, Charlie, I told you this afternoon I had it, and now it's just I cannot find it.
I can put the findings on the screen if you want to, if that will jog your memory as to what your verbiage was.
Therein lies the conundrum. Now, for some reason, my mouse is not working on the computer.
So, these are the applicable findings.
Okay, so on that, I was saying that I feel, given the report I've given, that the applicant has not convincingly demonstrated the additional parking requirement is needed as proposed, and that the provision for additional parking will result in a dependence on automobiles, which will adversely affect transit, bicycle, and pedestrians. And that's based on all the information I had given in my presentation. And like I honestly said, I had something written that would help that, but I do not know where I put it.
Do you have a succinct summary of what the sources were of the information you provided that we can cite?
Yes. So going back to so the sources used are the city of Dallas, the City of Dallas June 2020 meeting of their Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee, referencing their technical publication, Sources for Parking Demand Studies. The second item would be Access Magazine, article titled Roughly Right or Precisely Wrong, written by Donald Shoup, S-H-O-U-P. It is also referencing an article in the San Francisco Examiner, published on March 3rd. Written in conjunction by Spur and the Mineta Transportation Institute. And a corroborating report from the San Francisco Metropolitan Transit Authority, which was also referenced in that article, and it was written in 2017. And then it is my own research on parking garages in the neighborhood and a report or a study done by Transform at Pacific Park Plaza.
Okay. And for the resolution, we'll have to finalize your resolution. I mean, I obviously don't know what your vote is going to be at this point.
Correct.
But if you were to approve the motion that you and Commissioner Zepko have made, we will write out the findings based on what you just said. And I can go back and listen to this recording to make sure that I get correct, the sites that you made, and we will then put them into the final resolution.
Okay,
All right, so the first finding basically is that the applicant has not convincingly demonstrated that there is a demand for the proposed parking based on the following sources, and then list the sources you just mentioned.
okay,
Now, I will say, to deny a proposal, you only need to not be able to make one finding. In this case, the proposal requires two findings. You could not make both findings, in other words, make both findings in the negative, but you really only need one. If you want to make both, that probably makes the case stronger, but you can't approve it if you can't make both findings. So if you do not make one of them, then you have not approved it. But if you want to go ahead and also have language for the second finding, you could do that too.
I believe we do, because I believe overparking the project will encourage continued auto use, which then causes problems with other transits, such as bike, pedestrian, and public transit.
Okay. So I think that is sufficient for the findings. Christy, do you think that that is adequate?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that the staff report, or the proposed resolution, staff has recommended findings. If there are any reasons that you can't make the findings as staff has proposed, that's why I pointed you to page 138, 139 of the report. If there are particular reasons in there that you cannot make the ones that are currently proposed, you could add that as well. Otherwise, we're ready for motion.
Well, these are the findings that staff has proposed. This is for the first one. I can read it if you want. And this is for the second one. So this is what's actually in the resolution. And you would be replacing the language here in bold. That would be replaced with the language that you just provided, Chair Keller, assuming the other commissioners agree.
Correct. So I think with that, I'm just really frustrated that I'm not finding this thing I had written today, because it succinctly puts that all in. I think we're ready for a vote.
Let me just say one other thing, though, if I may, before we do that. I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to start another share.
Okay, hold on. Let me. I have found what I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
So let me just read this and see if it makes what we need. So the first finding is that the applicant has convincingly demonstrated that the additional parking is required to meet the anticipated parking demand for the proposed uses. The commission finds that the study completed by CHS Consulting and peer-reviewed by Fair and Peers used a matrix that, though current by industry standards, did not reflect true circumstances in Emeryville or the Greater Bay Area as detailed by the commission. Facts of the area's current overparking show that there is no evidence that more parking is needed, thus the applicant has not convincingly demonstrated the need for additional parking. And within that, we can cite all those sources that I've given you. For item B, it would be that the provisions of the additional parking will not result in an overdependence on automobiles and will not adversely affect transit, bicycle, or other pedestrian access to the site or other adjacent uses. As shown by the commission, using those examples I have cited, creating additional parking will create an overdependence on automobiles and will adversely impact transit, bicycle, and pedestrians. As stated in the applicant's information, employees of current applicant's properties arrive at their job by driving, and it is believed that this will continue. Providing abundant parking will encourage this continued mode, thus creating an overdependence on automobiles that will adversely affect other methods of transit.
All right.
I'd be happy to send those to you, so it makes it, if we want to use those exactly.
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Let me just suggest, if I may, Chair Keller, that if you are going to approve the project with these findings and disapprove the use permit for parking over the maximum, I would suggest that you also modify the conditions slightly. And, let me share my screen to just show you that. Here we go. These are the suggested conditions of approval. And the second project approvals, one is a conditional use permit for all these various things. Second is design review. And that explicitly says for a 55-foot tall, 496 space parking garage. So we would suggest that that be amended to say, prior to issuance of a building permit, the parking garage shall be redesigned to contain no more than 411 vehicular parking spaces. And then, I have to scroll down to the other one. There is an explicit condition of approval related to the parking garage that says how many spaces it has in it. Sorry, it's way down here. Here we go. Parking. Okay. So this says, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the community development director shall confirm that the final building plans for the project incorporate. And that condition said no greater than 496 parking spaces, and then it had that divided up between the lab building and the Hollow Street building. We would suggest that that be modified to say no greater than 411 vehicular parking spaces, of which up to 92 may be assigned to uses in the existing Hollis building, and up to 319 spaces may be made available to the R&D building. And those numbers are based on the analysis of the maximum parking demand of each of those two uses that was contained in the staff report, and also I believe in the staff presentation. So if you wish to approve the project with the motion that is on the floor and the amended resolution with the findings that Chair Keller has cited, I would suggest that you also modify these conditions of approval as I have illustrated here.
I would agree with that.
So, Chair
Commissioner
Keller,
Zebko, let me
yeah.
just ask Commissioner Zebko, you seconded my motion, so would you agree with the suggestions and changes that Charlie made on the condition of approval?
I think it works. I don't see why not.
Okay. Okay, so are we ready to vote?
I believe so. Just to clarify, you're voting on the conditional use permit and design review for the R&D building and the parking garage, approving it all based on the findings in the resolutions, with the exception of parking over the maximum, which would be denied based on the findings that Chair Keller has provided, and the conditions would be modified as I had suggested.
Very good.
Just to clarify, recommending approval and recommending denial, not approving.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Thank
To
you.
City Council.
Thank you, Christy. Yes, this is all a recommendation to the City Council. All right, if you're ready. Oh, Commissioner Chafe.
Sorry,
Chafe, I
just-
think has a question.
Yeah, one more thing to potentially add in there on page 101 of our packet, in the Fair and Pierce analysis, just before recommendation 4, there is also mention that I just wanted to bring up here. It says, however, the utilization of nearby parking garages can limit the effectiveness of a TDM strategy to provide less parking than demanded. And I think that summarizes some of what Chair Keller was just bringing up. So if that's relevant to your findings, then could potentially be added in as well.
It is, thank you. So I think what Commissioner Chafe is saying is that the Fair and Pierce made a comment that kind of supports the fact that there is other parking in the area that can be utilized. So we
I
can
will note that at Fair and Pierce's recommendation, we do have a condition of approval that says that this parking structure cannot be used for parking for any adjacent facilities and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have addressed that in the conditions of approval.
Okay. Ready for a vote?
Okay, as I have summarized, Commissioner Chafe,
Aye.
Commissioner Dram,
Aye.
Commissioner Simons,
Aye.
Commissioner Zepko,
Aye.
and Chair Keller.
Aye.
5 ayes, the motion is approved. You have approved the use permit and design review, except for being over the maximum, and we will forward your recommendation to the City Council.
Thank you very much, and thank you, fellow commissioners, for indulging me and listening to my diatribe. I hope it provided some value to you guys. So before we go on to the next item, do we need a break? Yes, okay, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break and we will reconvene at, let's just say 8:21. Okay, is Erica with us? Oh, Henry is here. Erica Zebko, are you with us? Well, Charlie, we have a quorum, so should we go ahead with item 6?
I think that would be fine.
Okay. So, I am all over the map tonight. So we will continue on with item 6.1, Marketplace Parcels A, B, and F study session. Can we please have the staff report?
Certainly. Let me bring up the PowerPoint. Oops. All right, can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a study session on the Marketplace redevelopment project, parcels A, B, and F. Before we begin, it's slightly complicated, so I just want to try to make it as clear as I can what is before the commission tonight. So there are 3 different aspects to this project. First is an amendment to the planned unit development / preliminary development plan, or PUD, PDP, and that affects parcels A, B, and F. Then there is an amendment to the development agreement, and that affects parcels A and F. And there is a final development plan, and that affects parcels A and B. Each of these is slightly different, has a slightly different approval process, so I just want to kind of clarify what that is. The PUD, PDP, and DA amendments both require approval of ordinances by the City Council, 2 ordinances, 1 for each, with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. That's tentatively scheduled for a public hearing by the Commission on August 25th, and then a City Council public hearing on August 20th, with a second reading on October 4th. Let me back up. I think I misspoke. September 20th would be the public hearing for the council, second reading on October 4th. The effective date would then be 30 days after that, which would be November 3rd. The third action, or the third issue, is the FDP, the final development plan. That is the actual design of the proposed buildings on parcels A and B. That requires only Planning Commission approval. It is not considered by the City Council unless it is appealed. However, the Commission cannot approve the FDP until after the PUD and DA are amended. So it doesn't go to the council unless it's appealed, but we scheduled the public hearing for you for September 22nd, which would be right after the council has first reading on the ordinances amending the PUD and the development agreement. If you approve it on September 22nd, and if the council approves the ordinances on September 20th and second reading on October 4th, then your approval of the FDP would not take effect until the ordinances take effect on November 3rd. So I hope that's clear. This is the approved PUD, PDP site plan approved by the City Council back in 2008. As it has actually developed over the years, it is slightly different from this, but the basic fundamental components of it are the same. This is the status of the various FDPs that the Planning Commission has approved over the years. The most recent being C and D, parcel C and parcel D. D is totally residential, it's completed and occupied. C is also residential. It includes a commercial component and a parking structure. It's also completed and occupied. This is parcels A and B. The actual approved FDPs for A and B include a 150,000 square foot lab building on parcel B and a 167 unit residential project on parcel A. Parcel F is a small retail pad. It does not have any FDPs approved to date. So currently there are 2 existing entitlements at the marketplace that haven't yet been built. As I said, one is the 167 units on parcel A, and the other is the R&D building of 150,000 square feet on parcel B. Both of those include ground floor retail space and associated parking. Also, the PUD that was approved by the City Council back in August 2008 shows a residential tower on parcel A, but the conditions of approval allow for its conversion to R&D uses, provided that there are at least 10 townhomes. So the PUD explicitly requires 10 townhomes on parcel A, regardless of whatever other use may be on parcel A. So any proposal that does not include a minimum of 10 residential units on parcel A will require a PUD amendment. The development agreement was approved by the council in, sorry, I'm getting some background noise here.
Yeah, Erica, could you mute your microphone? It's coming from Erica.
Okay, very good.
Or if you can mute her, I think there we go, thanks.
The development agreement was approved by the City Council in December of 2015, and it covers a variety of topics. And one of the topics it covers is affordable housing. Specifically, Section 7.1 stipulates that parcel A shall include 18 affordable units. In addition, it says that unless the city finds compelling reasons to the contrary, the affordable units shall be dispersed throughout the development, meaning that the 18 affordable units in parcel A were supposed to be dispersed throughout the 167 units that were approved for parcel A. So any proposal that does not include 18 affordable units on parcel A requires an amendment to the development agreement. So currently the applicant is not proposing any residential units on parcel A, so that will require amendments to both the PUD and the development agreement. So the timeline for the project to date has been this. On April 9th of last year, a new FDP was submitted for parcels A, B, and F. Planning Commission held a study session on that proposal last October. On November 2nd, the City Council also held a study session, and the reason it went to the Council was that at that time we already knew that a PUD and a DA amendment would be necessary, and that requires City Council action. So the Council held a study session. They did indicate at the time that they were willing to consider an in lieu fee instead of affordable units in the project. And I neglected to mention that part of the new FDP that was submitted in April of last year included 18 units on parcel F, which would include they would all be affordable, and 10 of them would be townhouses, meeting the requirement for both townhouses and affordable units. So then this council had a second study session on April 19th of this year. In November, when they indicated that they were willing to consider the in lieu fee instead of affordable units, they gave direction to staff to negotiate with the applicant about that and how much the in lieu fee would be. Staff reported back on April 19th about those negotiations. Council indicated that the amount was not sufficient, and they appointed an ad hoc committee consisting of the mayor and vice mayor to continue the negotiations with the applicant. On May 9th, just a month ago, a revised FDP was submitted for parcels A and B. Now, I will note that that really has no bearing on the council's deliberations because the FDP is not before the council, it's only before the Planning Commission. Nonetheless, on May 17th, the City Council had a follow-up study session to the one that they had held on April 19th, at which the ad hoc committee, consisting of the mayor and vice mayor, reported back to the full council on the status of their negotiations on the in lieu fee, which the rest of the council accepted and agreed to. And then tonight we have the study session before the Planning Commission. So this is the site plan for the proposal that was submitted last April. I will say that it took about 6 months. You'll note that it was submitted in April, but the Planning Commission study session on it wasn't until October. It took 6 months because the applicant had to negotiate over the design with the Alameda County Fire Department. Fire Department had a lot of concerns about the design, and after 6 months they were able to work out those concerns. This is the design that resulted from the applicant's negotiations with the fire department. It included a lab building here, another smaller lab building here, and then a parking structure on the south end. So the two lab buildings combined would have been 406,000 square feet. Parking structure would have been 833 spaces. And as I said, it included 18 residential units over here on parcel F, including all of which would be affordable and 10 of which would be townhomes, and 8 of them would be flats. This is what that project looked like from the east, looking towards the bay. And so you have the parking structure on the left and the larger lab building on the right and the smaller lab building in the middle. And this is what that looked like from the Showmont Street side, from the west side. As a result of the council's openness to the negotiation of a monetary contribution, the housing on parcel F has now been eliminated. And also, as a result of negotiations that occurred between the applicant and Wareham, the proposed FDP has now been redesigned. The proposed FDP now, the one that was just submitted a month ago, includes a 421,000 square foot R&D building, just one building, a 711 space parking structure, a plaza between the R&D building and the parking structure, and a small pavilion building of about 5,000 square feet, which will include retail and bicycle parking, and that would be in the plaza between the two buildings. So this is that site plan. This is the currently proposed FTP. This is the new lab building on the north part. This is the parking structure. Same location, it's a little smaller than it was before. And then this is the plaza between. Here's the staircase coming down from the railroad bridge, and then the retail and bicycle parking pavilion is over here on the plaza. This is a ground level plan that basically illustrates that. And here is a second floor plan that shows a connection between the R&D building and the roof of the pavilion. There would be a terrace up there on that roof. That would be private. It would be for the tenants of the lab building. However, the plaza around it at ground level would be open to the public. And this is the roof plan. This is a section taken north-south and looking west. So this is looking from the railroad direction. If you were to slice the buildings in half, this is the lab building on the right. It's 10 stories and about 162 feet tall. This is the parking structure on the left, of course. This is the plaza in between, which is, says here, 290 feet wide. And then a small pavilion building retail and parking here. For car circulation, all the car circulation would be from the south into the parking structure from the intersection here with Shellmount Street via the drive aisle of the hotel next door. All of the delivery and trash would be from the north up here into the lab building. This is bicycle circulation, so of course you have your bicycle facilities on Shellmount Street. You also have access to the bridge via the staircase and also via an elevator and to parking. This is pedestrian circulation, where of course again you have the sidewalks on Shellmount Street and access to the bridge, access back here into the 62nd Street and the public market. And then the red arrows represent major building access points and for pedestrians, and the smaller green arrows represent secondary access points for pedestrians. The dashed lines here represent crosswalks, and I'll talk about those more in a second. So this is an illustrative drawing of what it would look like from the west. Here's the lab building on the left and the parking structure on the right and the plaza in between and the Emery Station West building across the railroad tracks. And here's the staircase to the bridge over the railroad. This is what it would look like from the east, looking west, basically from the Emery Station West building. As you can see, there's this proposed plaza opens up a view corridor through which you can see the bay and the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, and then San Francisco skyline over here on the left. This is another rendering looking north on Shellmount Street. So, concerning conformity to the general plan and consistency with the approved PUD and PDP, this is designated mixed use with residential in the general plan, where residential, office, retail, and associated parking are permitted. The current proposal is consistent with this land use designation, and office and research and development uses are explicitly allowed in the PUD conditions of approval. So the use is consistent with both the zoning and the general plan. As we have noted previously, the housing element of the general plan includes 674 units throughout the Marketplace project in its residential site inventory, which is a tool for assessing the city's ability to meet our regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA. This total includes 225 units on parcel A, whereas the approved FDP includes 167 units, and this proposal would reduce that number to 0. However, this is not considered an inconsistency with the general plan because the site inventory is only a tool and it is not regulatory. There's no requirement that every site identified in the housing element site inventory be developed with housing. This table illustrates the differences between what was approved in the PUD PDP back in 2008, the various FDPs that have been approved for parcel A and B. As I said, there's no FDP for parcel F, and the proposed new FDP. And it compares the amount of commercial space, the amount of retail space, the amount of residential units, and the amount of parking. I won't go through this in detail, but I do have a little summary, which is that the project includes about 271,850 square feet of more office and lab space than the PUD, and about 271,000 square feet more than the FDPs. It includes about 13,000 square feet less retail than the PUD, PDP, and about 25,000 square feet less retail than the approved FDPs. It also includes 206 fewer housing units than the PUD, PDP, and 167 fewer housing units than the approved FDPs. It includes 475 fewer parking spaces than the PUD, and it includes 76 fewer parking spaces than the approved FDPs. The height of the proposed R&D building is 162 feet, where the PUD says it should be 120 feet. I would note that those height limits are somewhat flexible and buildings can possibly be moved around. I'll get back to that in a second. The most significant deviation of the proposed FDP is the increase in office and lab space, which is about 2.8 times what the PUD envisions. However, the conditions of approval of the PUD, PDP do allow for this kind of a change, as long as a traffic study is done and there's appropriate compliance with CEQA, and significantly that the overall floor area ratio of the project is not exceeded. This FDP would not come close to exceeding the FAR of the overall project, and a traffic study and CEQA compliance will be done as part of the approval process of the project. So the condition is satisfied to make these changes in the PUD. The PUD, considering the PUD amendment, as I said, PUD stipulates that you have to have at least 10 townhouse units on parcel A. And as the FDP doesn't include any residential on parcel A, the PUD needs to be amended to change that. To ensure, however, that because the PUD is the zoning of the site, and under state law, we're not supposed to downzone sites for less residential density, that is to say net loss of housing. So in order to ensure there is no net loss of housing, the proposed PUD amendment would move those 10 townhouse units from parcel A to parcel F. It would not require them to be constructed right now, but it would put a requirement for 10 townhouse units on parcel F in the future. So if parcel F was ever developed in the future, it would have to have at least 10 townhouse units. As I said, a PUD amendment requires City Council approval with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And also, we would recommend that the PUD be amended to explicitly allow a height of at least up to 162 feet on parcel B, so there's no question that the proposed lab building would be allowed. Concerning the development agreement, as I said, section 7.1 stipulates that parcel A must include 18 affordable units, which includes 8 low-income and 10 moderate-income units. Combining the DA requirement and the PUD requirement, parcel A is required to contain at least 18 affordable units, of which at least 10 must be townhouses. So the DA would need to be modified to show no residential development on parcel A and a monetary contribution instead of such residential development. Again, a DA amendment requires council approval upon a recommendation from the commission. Concerning the monetary contribution in lieu of the affordable units, the initial proposal that staff negotiated would be about $2 million for the affordable housing impact fee, which they have to pay anyway, plus $15 million in addition to be made to the city's affordable housing fund, which would be a total of $17 million. This was the proposal that the council determined to be insufficient. And but under this proposal, the affordable housing fee would be paid at the building permit issuance, and the remainder would be paid prior to issuance of the first temporary certificate of occupancy for the R&D building. At the May 7th meeting, Mayor Bowders presented the ad hoc committee's proposal that they had negotiated, and that includes at least a remittance of $20 million to the city's housing fee, and that would housing fund rather, and that would include the affordable housing impact fee, and it also would stipulate when those payments would need to be made. Also, it includes a commitment from the applicant to support any application to secure affordable housing tax credits with this in lieu fee money. And finally, they have agreed to pedestrianize Market Drive between the hours of 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. 7 days a week. That is the street that basically looks like a service road that is behind the public market, and it's adjacent to the city's Christie Avenue sites to the west. And the idea of pedestrianizing that street during the day would be to enhance the pedestrian connectivity with the city's Christie sites when they are ultimately developed. So the applicant has agreed to these three provisions. And as I said, the City Council was satisfied and amenable to the amendments to the PUD and the development agreement that are required. The DCC, the Staff Development Coordinating Committee, reviewed the project on May 11th. The committee felt the new plaza had the potential to be a great amenity but needed to be programmed well. There were some ideas about designing the space so that special events such as movie screenings could be had, and using the space under the stairs, for example, for play equipment. The location of the elevator in the garage building was considered appropriate by staff from a visibility and safety point of view, and a suggestion was made to consider glass or other transparent materials for the elevator walls to maximize visibility. The absence of a curb passenger pickup and drop-off area was noted, and there was a suggestion to create a train viewing space at the bridge connection. This is a diagram that was prepared by Public Works, and it concerns the crosswalks on Shellmount Street, the proposed crosswalks along Shellmount Street. They do have a very wide one here at the bend in the road, which Public Works is suggesting be eliminated, and that one be added here at the base of the staircase, and that other existing crosswalks be eliminated or relocated, and that other new crosswalks be added. This diagram is in your packet, so I won't go over it in detail here. So concerning the next steps, the project was to have been reviewed by BPAC on Monday. However, BPAC didn't have a quorum for their meeting, so I believe that's being rescheduled for later this month. I believe it was reviewed, or is to be reviewed, sorry, by the Parks and Rec Committee next week. The City Council, the Planning Commission public hearing, as I have already indicated, would be on August 25th, and that would be on your recommendation on the PUD, PDP, and development agreement amendments to the council. On September 20th, there'd be a public hearing at the council on those amendments. On September 22nd, assuming the council passes those amendments on first reading on September 20th, and 2 days later, the commission would have a public hearing on the proposed FTP. And if you approve that, it would be contingent upon the effectiveness of the PUD and DA amendments. On October 4th would be the second reading of those amendments, and then everything would take effect on November 3rd. So, the questions we have for your discussion Number one, does the Planning Commission have any comments on the proposed PUD, PDP, and DA amendments? Secondly, is the Commission satisfied with the current FDP design treatment of the three buildings, including the lab, the retail pavilion, and the parking structure, and I might add, and the proposed plaza in between them? And finally, does the Commission desire to discuss any other issues with the proposed project? And that concludes the staff presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you so much. That was very convoluted. You did a very good job keeping track of it. Man, that is complicated.
Oh, I thought you were going to say clear and concise.
Oh, yes, totally. So with that, I would think there would be some questions. So Commissioner Chafe, any questions of staff on that?
Surprisingly, maybe no, not at this point. Thank you.
Good. Charlie did a good job. Commissioner Durham, any questions?
I have a quick question. How does this in lieu fee become like a housing units? How's the process?
Good question.
Well, it becomes part of the city's resources for funding affordable housing. As you may know, the City Council approved a expenditure plan back in, I guess it was March of last year now, and that was prompted by the $50 million housing bond that the voters approved several years ago. But we also have an additional about $14 million, I think, in our various housing funds. And this plan stipulates all of the various affordable housing programs that money would be put towards. This money would be an additional pot of money that would be added to that. And I don't know if Chad wants to add anything.
No, you really summed it up pretty well. There'd be a stipulation in the development agreement that deposit would be made to the Affordable Housing Fund, which is a fund we've set up, and it receives 20% of the residual tax increment from the former redevelopment agency and is dedicated by the City Council through the budget process every year for affordable housing. And yes, with this amount of significant sort of unanticipated revenues, we would likely take the opportunity to amend the expenditure plan at a future date to program those funds to projects and programs that are in the expenditure plan. And so, yeah, that was a good summary, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and any other questions, Commissioner Durham?
Not at the moment.
Okay, Commissioner Simons.
Thanks, Chair Keller. I have some questions about the affordable townhouses. So it sounds like, I was a little confused. So they're planned, but they don't have to build them. How does that work?
Well, the conditions of approval, and frankly, I can't recall the reason for it. I'm sure it resulted from at the time, back in 2008, the Planning Commission and City Council deliberations on the PUD. But the conditions of approval explicitly state that there must be 10 townhouse units on parcel A. At the time, it was referred to as the Shell Mount site. And since the conditions of approval explicitly require 10 townhome units on that parcel, in order to be consistent with the PUD, this FDP would have to have 10 townhouse units. And since it doesn't, they need to amend the PUD to not include the 10 townhouse units. And also, because the PUD is considered the zoning of the site, and we don't want to reduce the number of potential residential units that are allowed by the zoning, we would not eliminate the 10 townhouse unit requirement entirely, but we would relocate it across the street to parcel F, so that in the future, if and when parcel F is ever developed, it would have to include those 10 townhouse units that were originally envisioned to be across the street.
Got it. So is there any talk of requiring these townhouse units be, built before the certificate of occupancy is given to the biotech building, or before they start construction on the biotech building? I feel like the time is really now. I'd love to see if we can work that in here.
That is not part of the deal that the mayor and vice mayor negotiated with the applicant.
Got it.
Anything else? No? Okay, and Commissioner Zebko, any questions for staff? not hearing any, I have none. So what we could do, is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes, there is, and I will promote them now.
Alrighty.
And let me see. There are two Marcel Wilsons listed here. I'm going to promote both of them. I suspect one is probably on a cell phone. Right. Take it away, Oxford and CCRP.
Thanks, Charlie, for your very, very thorough presentation of a complicated project. Thanks again to city staff, commissioners, and community members for your time tonight. I was expecting to make a joke about the Warriors game going on, but I believe it's over. I won't have any spoilers in there in case anyone's recording it. My name is Lauren Krause, Vice President and Head of West Coast Development for Oxford Properties. I'm also a California native and have lived in the Bay Area for the last 10 years with my family. As Charlie mentioned, we're before you for a study session to hear comments on some revisions and updates on our project. Next slide, please, Greg. Here's the project most recently discussed with the Planning Commission, City Council, and community. We've heard a number of comments about massing, parking, open space, and pedestrian and cyclist experience, and have listened by modifying our project as shown here. Next slide, please, Greg. The most significant change we've made is to completely remove the 4-story building and use the creative space to design a football field-sized public park and a more generous and activating bicycle pavilion. The square footage lost in the 4-story building was added to the 8-story building in 2 levels to bring the height to 10 stories. By changing the use from a building to a park, we've opened up the project to be more community-focused, enhancing the connection between the east and west side of the train tracks, giving more space back to pedestrians and cyclists. Additionally, we've heard the continued concerns about overparking the community and have responded by removing a level from our garage, resulting in a 15% parking reduction from 831 to 711 spaces. As indicated in the staff report, because of these conversations, we rescheduled our May study session and are here before you all tonight. I very much appreciate the time our neighbor across the tracks has given us to hear feedback and make changes to address their concerns. In addition to these changes, and as Mr. Bryant summarized in his report, we've worked with City Council on an improved and approved package to address city and regional need for housing. The package commits us to contribute $20 million to the affordable housing production at a time schedule that will support projects identified by the city. If we assume a unit cost of approximately $800,000, the $20 million would allow the city to build 25 units and possibly dramatically more if matching grants or tax credits were achieved. Locating affordable housing in amenity and transit-rich areas and in mixed-income buildings improves residents' lives, and to this end, in addition to the financial contribution, we'll be converting Market Drive from parking spaces into a pedestrian-only area during the day. We're just starting the process of thinking about what this space could be, but our initial thoughts include movable tables, chairs, various types of open seating, places where people can spill out into the sunshine. Not only will this conversion result in a new community amenity for current and future residents, but the added access to the public market will also help our small vendors who have been very challenged during the pandemic and respond to calls to promote a better balance between parking spaces with green spaces. Thanks again for your time tonight and look forward to hearing your thoughts and feelings about this. I'll turn it over to Greg Hasler with our design team to get into some of the details of our revised plan.
Thanks a lot, Lauren. Good evening, commissioners and community members. My name is Greg Hadsall, architect and principal with HDR. As Lauren highlighted, the new design provides a great opportunity to better connect the city of Emeryville. This site plan shows the public market district on image bottom, with the railroad and east side of Emeryville on the top. Similar to Charlie's drawings, north is to the left for this image and all following plans. The pedestrian-oriented areas in the area have been outlined in red, which highlights the existing gap between the west and east Emeryville communities. By creating a large open park, the public market district engages the east side of Emeryville in a more meaningful way and starts to knit the urban fabric together. To the bottom of the image, we show a new vision for Market Drive that was discussed tonight, which is to become a more pedestrian-oriented outdoor space with tables and chairs for residents, community, and visitors to enjoy access to the market and nearby Christie Park. We're happy to share more development of Market Drive in the future. In addition to the major changes that Lauren discussed, we wanted to show how we've been responsive to the comments received from the Planning Commission, City Council, advisory committees, and community to create a better place to live and work. The new design responds to comments received on pedestrian experience by adding a significant open space to the city of Emeryville, consolidating service to the north side, and replacing some of the on-street parking with parklets. We have responded to community comments to refine the well-received grand stair by improving the geometry for better views. We've added another bike rail to improve bike access, and we've also incorporated some community comments to create a larger train viewing platform that's adjacent to the tracks. We've responded to community comments. We've also been able to incorporate pedestrian and bicycle safety by adding a protected bike lane both on the east and west sides along Shellmount Street. We've been able to provide safer access to long-term bike storage, adding retractable bollards as advised from the BPAC committee at the fire access lane. And we've also created a signalized intersection at the parking structure corner, which will provide safe both pedestrian and bicycle access at that critical corner. The parking structure has been enhanced by implementing an aggressive transportation demand management plan. As Lauren noted, we've been able to reduce parking by 15%. The west side of the garage has been softened up by increasing plantings both at the street level, but also on the upper facade. And we propose committing a large portion of the west facade to a major art installation. The image shown here is really a placeholder, and we'll discuss more about the art program and our selection later in the presentation. As discussed as well, we've been able to incorporate a net zero energy approach to the parking garage. We feel that the public market also aligns very well with Emory's vision, which is of sustainability and innovation with respect to the past, and supports the city's implementation strategies such as the Climate Action 2.0 and bicycle and pedestrian plans. We've listed some of the features below here and categorized them into three major groups. And we feel with the new park, by creating a stronger community connection and increase in public access to nature, open and daylight, as well as expanding equal access to public transportation, that we are providing better community and equity. By also increasing the amount of green area to the city, reducing the urban heat island effect, incorporating bay-friendly landscaping, and the increase of city trees, we're providing a place for health and well-being. And by using carbon reduction targets to help drive towards results such as a LEED Gold R&D building, and also achieving GBCI Park Smart design credits, we feel like we're contributing both to the cities, the Bay Areas, and frankly, the world's climate and energy goals. This view highlights the Research and Development Building, which continues its architectural language as we previously presented, which uses modern materials of glass curtain walls, metal accents, and featuring terracotta panels to blend with the overall public market district palette. Exterior balconies have now been added both on the south and the west sides to open up the building both to the park and the adjacent community. You can see in the center of the image a new pavilion which anchors the park and serves as an architectural counterpoint between the R&D building and the parking structure, and provides a transition to a smaller scale. It will provide multiple small format retail that will complement the public market and community and house potential activities and programs such as a cafe or wine bar. Towards the back of the pavilion is private long-term bike storage with easy and safe access for bicyclists. This view, taken from the food hall looking towards the south, shows how the R&D main entrance now anchors one corner of the park. And as noted before, we show here the protected bike lanes on both sides of Emeryville with concrete curbs. We also have retractable bollards for a fire access lane. If you recall, before we had a service lane in the center of the site, that's no longer necessary. So we're able to really truly separate service vehicles, which is all towards the north, from the main pedestrian and bicycle thoroughfares. In the foreground is the grand stair, which helps support a transit-rich environment that connects with easy access to Amtrak across the railroad tracks. Its landing at the street side connects with the Emery go-around bus stop. There's adjacent short-term bike parking as well as bike share nearby as well. This shows how open views are provided both to the public market in the foreground, but also to the city of San Francisco in the larger Bay Area. As noted by Charlie, we really try to increase the view corridor. It's up to 270 feet wide compared to the previously approved FDP of 160 feet. The overall composition also frames and highlights the new park, which Marcel will talk to you a little bit more about.
Good evening, commissioners. Marcel Wilson, I'm a landscape architect and design director at Bionic. It's an honor to be here this evening just to discuss the exciting future of the public market and the development of this great city. Great cities have great public spaces in their most important places. In each variation of this project, we've always endeavored to make the best of the public space within the project's constraints. In this evolution, the project will bring a new 1 acre public park to Emeryville's most iconic place. Community members, visitors, workers, food hall patrons will all now have a generous public space that's open to enrich their everyday lives and experiences at the market. This will be a destination open space at a critical node in Emeryville on a much larger scale. As a complement to Christie Park, which is more oriented to kids and families and dogs, the new park will establish a symbolic center for the city and the public market district. It will complete a missing link in the city's open space and bike network with a pedestrian priority environment. And if you've traveled across the country on Amtrak, this is the grand welcome and arrival to the Golden Gate in the Pacific that you'd want to see. Next slide, please. The park will offer places and amenities that currently are not available in the district. There'll be a flexible plaza and lawn spaces. There'll be gardens with species for pollinators. There'll be shade for trees, outdoor dining options, a range of seating, and an informal stage. And the park will also screen the tracks from views and noise. Next slide. This is the site plan for the park. The pavilion in the upper left corner will have, on the front side, it will provide 2 or 3 food and beverage options. That might be coffee or grab and go or beer and wine. And then in the back of the pavilion, there will be park support space, a place for storage for chairs and so on. And bicycle parking for the R&D tenants so that the public racks will be open and available and ample for other users. Then there's the roof of the pavilion, and there'll be a small outdoor space there for the R&D tenants' use. The new building and the pavilion will be an activator for the district day and night, regularly bringing thousands of people to the district and the market every day. Patrons for the businesses, activations for the park and streets, and a greater degree of safety and regular maintenance. Next slide, please. For the community, the park is a place you can go for a picnic. You can go there for a play date, maybe see an outdoor movie or hear some music. If you're coming from the neighborhood to the east or arriving by a train, you might stop at the viewing platform at the top. And then descend down the grand stair. We'll take in the view from the different landings before you land in a generous plaza space that is clearly public and welcoming. And if you were working here or visiting the food hall, the park will be the place to take your lunch. You can choose a place to sit in the sun or the shade of trees, to meet friends or colleagues for drinks. This large-scale project will bring much needed change and invigoration to the Market District. And the new pedestrian safety improvements, the bike facilities, the new park, and a robust public art program will be truly transformative to your great city. Greg will now review the public art component of the project.
Thanks a lot, Marcel. As you may recall, the project's current art master plan was approved in July 2020 and will be revised once we complete the planning process to address these exciting new site changes. The goals and curatorial vision will remain the same. On the right side is a wonderful sculpture by local artist Sophie Ramos that will be installed in July at the southwest entrance of Christie Park and epitomizes these goals. The public art budget is currently $3.5 million. On the site plan, you can see the two pre-approved art locations in blue, Christie Park and the Public Market Breezeway, and the two new locations in red, the Park and Grand Stair and the parking structure west facade. For the new locations, we reviewed local, national, and international artists that work within the curatorial framework and are appropriate for the site. We then narrowed the list down to 10 artists that developed site-specific proposals, 5 for the park and 5 for the parking structure. The artwork on the parking structure will welcome people as they come from the north, as well as people walking, biking, and driving along Showmount Street. Below are the 5 selected artists. And on the next slide, below are the 5 selected artists for the park and the Grand Stair. Artwork in the park will activate and enhance the space and also provide wayfinding opportunities for meeting spaces. We're excited about how the artwork will engage with the site and serve as attractions for the public market district and the community. I'll turn it back over to Lauren for final thoughts.
Thanks very much, Greg and Marcel. We are going to keep this presentation short and just get into questions and answers. So thanks again for everyone's time, and we'll turn it back over to Chair Keller.
Thank you so much. Good presentation. I myself don't have any clarifying questions, but is there anyone else on the commission that have questions for the applicant? Commissioner Simons.
Thanks, Chair Keller. I have a question about the small businesses in the pavilion. Do you expect to need to subsidize those businesses, and can you commit to an amount of money you're willing to spend over the next 20 or 25 years to make sure they're fully occupied and going? It seems really important to making the park happen.
Yes, we absolutely want those businesses in the pavilion to thrive. We haven't fully developed exactly what the site planner used for the pavilion will be. We've been supporting some of the tenants some of the vendors in the marketplace hall, and the pavilion would be just as important to us as the marketplace hall. So I don't know, we haven't discussed actual amounts or anything like that, but it's absolutely critical for us that the pavilion stays occupied and a use that activates the park.
Thank you. And so my other question is about the art. Just on one of the last couple of slides, there were like giant big P's, about all the parking. And I think we're pretty down on parking, as you can tell from the comments earlier this evening. Can we just make sure there's like as little as possible mention of parking on the side of that building, like anything else? We can flip back to that slide, or you can just go and look at it.
Let me clarify for you, Henry. I think possibly what you're seeing is the P, big P and the small M, which stands for public market. It's
great. Okay. Excellent.
Is that not correct, Lauren?
I think so. Yes. Well, if that's confusing, it might be
that's right.
Other members of the public. So, got it.
I agree. We don't want to blast parking on everything, but I think their logo is something they want around.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I think those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Chair Keller, may I just ask, do you want to stop the share so that you can all see each other, or do you want to keep this?
It's up to, because I like looking at this because it kind of brings out questions. I have a big TV I'm looking at, so I can't really tell the people who are looking on laptops. So if you all like to close this, we could do that, but I'm fine with it. Any other questions, Commissioner Zipko? Commissioner Dram?
So the new proposed parking, is it only for private use or is it open to public?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Dram, you said the park or the parking?
Parking.
The parking. So the parking structure serves a number of different uses. It's not only for the new building, so it serves community uses that we're legally required to provide, in addition to uses that are already in the community in terms of the tenants and marketplace hall, and it serves the R&D building.
Thank you.
I would note that this project is replacing existing surface parking lots that currently serve the marketplace, and so this parking structure would part of it would be to replace that existing surface parking.
Yeah, if
Thank
it
you, Mr.
helps,
Bryant, yes.
if it helps, we could say in part of your packet, it says the parking structure serves several populations within the adjacent public market district, including visitors to the public market food hall, restaurants, and retail. Parcel B, R&D building, office building across the Showmount Street, the Hyatt Hotel. It can also help accommodate overflow parking needs adjacent public transportation, including Amtrak station and the Showmount Street bus stop. So it's serving quite a bit.
That's right, Chair Keller. Yep.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we will close this portion of this and bring it to the public. This is a study session, so it's not a public hearing, but we are opening it for anybody in the public who has comments on the project. And if anyone would like to speak, we invite you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And Director Bryant, are there any online speaker cards or anyone raising their hands in the room? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. I have not received any online speaker cards. Let me just double check and make sure that none have come in the last 30 seconds. No. There is one raised hand among the attendees, and this is Parisa Penny. She didn't say how to pronounce her last name.
Great, thank you. Welcome,
Right.
and please
Go
give
ahead.
us your thoughts in 3 minutes. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, I live at the Terraces, which is on the other side of the railroad track, and I work at 5858 Horton Street. So I live on one side of the Horton Street and work on the other side of it. And the parcel A is directly in the view of our building. And I have to say, in the past almost 20 years that I live and work in Emeryville, I have never seen a project this beautiful. I have seen a lot of developers and architects come and present us with different buildings, and honestly, I have never seen anything this attractive. And I want to, and I know that the planning commissioners and the councils are going to do their due diligence to make it more attractive and be more mindset. But as a, someone that lives in the community, with my naive eyes, I have to say this is absolutely beautiful. I really appreciate it. And the fact that you opened up that space between the two buildings, parcel A and B, I suspect that's what it's called. It's very attractive. And I really appreciate that you listened to the community and did not raise the height of parcel A. And if you can even diminish it even more, I would appreciate it. But I really thank you for listening to us and not obstructing our views any more than it has already been. And the design is very pleasant and attractive. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I appreciate you sticking around. It's kind of late in the evening, so we appreciate hearing from you. Anyone else?
Yeah. I do not see any further raised hands among the attendees. Let me just make a last check of my email.
And if you'll demote the last speaker.
No raised, no online speaker cards. Yes, I will take care of that.
Okay. So not seeing any other public comments, we will close the public comment portion of this and bring it back to the commission. Is there anyone with the commission that would like to start, or should I just call on somebody? In this arena, it's kind of best, so I'll just call on somebody so we don't talk over each other. And Commissioner Chafe, you're first on my screen.
Thank you, Chair Keller. Thanks so much to the applicants and to Charlie for the great presentations. This is quite complicated, but overall, I agree with the public comment. I think this is looking really good. I appreciate that you included a sustainability slide from the applicant side, making clear mention of the city's climate goals and other sustainability criteria. I like the current design of the grand staircase and the train viewing. The park is great. I love seeing this amount of open space. Some of the views I see of it have a lot of concrete in the middle, and I know that the park design will be refined, but you know, it may be that we want to minimize the amount of impervious surface and make a little bit more natural area around it, but I know there are a lot of different user needs to balance. I think, you know, my only big concern is around the lack of housing, and I know that this is something that's been discussed and that there is a tentative plan in place. It's just really hard for me to balance that with a lot of the discussions we've been having around the housing obligation that Emeryville has. So I'm actually really curious to hear what my other fellow commissioners have to say about this. But those are my comments for now. Thanks.
Thank you. And Commissioner Dram.
Thank you so much for presentation and changes you made. I think the opening of the buildings and having that park, open public park, was a big improvement. My question is, like, what happened to those affordable housing that we had earlier? Still is a question for me that how we can build those in near future. Other than that, thank you so much.
Alrighty, thank you. And Commissioner Simon.
Thanks, Chair Keller. Just a couple of comments. I'm really excited about the park. I think it's going to be very, very nice. And I think the buildings in general are quite nice. You know, like other commissioners, I'm really concerned about the lack of housing. And I know you've negotiated some deal with the council, but it would be amazing if at one of the next meetings you could show up and say, hey, in addition to everything you've already offered, we're committing to building these townhouses before we start construction on the rest of the project. I'd love to hear you come and tell that to us. More generally, so on another topic, I'm concerned about bike access to this site. I think, you know, the two obvious ways are to come from Bay Street over our great new red bridge, and then to sort of from 65th, and I guess 65th and Shell Mound or whatever the street is. Neither of those, I think it's a long, somewhat unpleasant bike ride under Powell Street. It'd be great if, I don't know if the city can work with you to, you know, improve the bike infrastructure out to the north and south of the project. I think in particular, when I'm doing my lunchtime tour to Emeryville, I think the 65th or whatever, the scary intersection we were talking about earlier, 65th and Shell Mound is just not that great, and any money you can spend to improve that for bikes and pedestrians would be really great. I think, you know, it's much nicer to ride your bike than to wheel it up some stairs, then down some stairs. I'm sure lots of people are going to be biking there. And I think at this point, those are all of my comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And Commissioner Zebko, any comments you'd like to make? Hello, Eric, are you there with us? Okay, I'll take that as no comments. So I just have a couple, and Greg, I don't know if you're in control of the screen, but if you could show the slide where it shows the, you may not have it, Charlie, it might be you that has the one on the BCC comments on the crosswalks.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to comment on those. So while Charlie's bringing that up, I appreciate what you guys have done. I really am glad to hear from some in the public that they do like the idea. I'm very excited about another park in our city. We just simply don't have enough of those. So that is really great, that when I'm sure it's going to develop. And I think the pavilion, in Europe and other countries, I love how their parks have cafes in them. And it's really nice to be able to go to a park and be in a cafe and sit out someplace like that. And we just don't do that in the States. And I really am very excited and hope to see great things come of that. I really like how the garage connects to the staircases. I like seeing how people can exit the garage on the 3rd floor and come outside and onto the staircase and not be in a scary parking garage. So I think that was a really nice addition that we didn't expect. So I greatly appreciate that. So if we could look at the...
What just happened?
You're sharing your screen, or you were?
I was trying to, but it seems to have framed it.
Oh, the days that we can be done with Zoom.
Yeah, wait a second. I'm gonna stop. I think I might have 2 versions of this running, which might be the problem. Hang on a second.
So what I want to do is I just want to suggest keeping some of the crosswalks that the BCC is saying removing, because people are in that lab building or the garage, they're going to jaywalk. If there's not a crosswalk in there, they're just going to jaywalk. People do it all the time here, and it's just better if we provide obvious crosswalks, and I don't think it adds any cost, and it certainly doesn't cause a problem to have too many crosswalks. So I'll show you. I do like the idea of bringing a crosswalk out from the grand staircase. I think that's very good. Yeah, so.
Okay.
There we go. So I agreed to get rid of the large crosswalk. I think that's fine. And I like the idea of putting in the new one to the right of that at the end of the staircase. And I like the one to the north of that at the corner of the lab building entering. But I also think the 2 outside of that, far north to the corner of the building, no, that one's gonna stay. That, come back to a little more, that one. That one is used all the time. And it cuts into the alleyway that cuts into the gym that's in there. So I think that should stay, because there's the great distance between the green line and the red line up there. That's huge. And people coming out of that lab building to go to the public market, they're going to cross right in the middle of the street, whether there's a crosswalk or not. So I think that needs to stay. And I think the one at the very corner coming out of the parking garage to kind of, yeah, that one there, I think that also needs to stay. Because people are, if they're coming out of the garage and going to the public market, they're going to cross right there, whether there's a crosswalk or not. So I think we need to keep safety as forefront of mind. And if we have 5 crosswalks, I think there's nothing wrong with that. In addition, I think crosswalks add a sense of traffic calming, because either they're being used or people see them, they tend to slow down, and slowing traffic on the street would never be a bad thing. So I think I'd like to keep those 2 crosswalks, and the addition of the 2 that they're suggesting, I think that's something I'd like to see go forward. But other than that, I thank you guys for coming up with such a viable plan. The housing is definitely a problem. We've said that from the beginning. It just doesn't look like that to get the parcel A and B done, we're going to see housing. But I'm thankful that you guys have agreed to contribute 20 million, because what I'm seeing that the possibility is that in a number of months, we're going to see something on the city parcels on Christie. And that wants to be affordable housing. And I think we're going to apply that 20 million to those projects, and we will see something develop there in a short order of time. I think we're definitely going to see something there before we see 10 townhouses on parcel F. So I think because the workout you guys have with the council, that you will deposit that money fairly soon before you get your TOC, et cetera, will give us the ability to contract with developers to develop the 3 parcels we have on Christie into housing. So that's kind of a booby prize, so to speak, because we've lost 167 units, but being things as they are, I like what you guys have offered us at this point. So those are all my comments, and I wish you guys luck and speed in getting this going. I'm really tired of seeing that parking lot and that empty parcel. So with that, are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Does the developer, go ahead, Commissioner Shea.
All right, just to follow up on the question about bike access. So I was just trying to look back at the plans and trace what happens if you come over the train tracks with a bike. So I'm looking at page 62 of our packet, and it looks like then you head straight on the parking garage to an elevator. Is that right?
I believe that is correct. There's also bike troughs on the stairs. There's a bike trough on the Wareham side, and I think you guys said you're putting 2 bike troughs on the stairs. And then you also come forward to the front of the Shellman's side of the parking garage, and there's the elevator there.
An elevator. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'm thinking about from giant bikes that aren't able to fit on the troughs and can fit in some elevators. So maybe just one consideration, if there's any flexibility on the size of that elevator, would be to accommodate length for cargo bikes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you guys need to make sure that they can accommodate larger bikes. Because with electric bikes, the bikes are really getting commonly larger, so I think that's a good suggestion.
They're the minivans of bikes.
Yeah, I call them the SUVs.
More accurate.
Okay, so does the applicant feel they've gotten enough information to move forward?
Yes, I don't have any clarifying questions. I too have a 2-seater plus me cargo bike SUV in my garage, so definitely understand the need for larger elevators. Those things are heavy too. I would not want to push mine up one of the rails. So yeah, very.
Are you guys thinking of bicycle charging in the garage? Something to charge electric bikes?
Bicycle electric charging in the garage?
Yeah.
I don't know if we've thought about that yet.
Consider that if you would.
Greg, do you have any? Yeah.
Not yet in the parking garage. It's a really good comment. I know we're definitely incorporating it into the long-term bike storage.
But that's going to be, the pavilion bike storage is going to be for the lab building specifically though, right?
Yeah, so and it's a very good point. It's something that we can look at, looking at key locations where you might have public access. Yeah, we definitely have all of the electrical vehicle infrastructure in the parking garage, so it's something we could look at and might be relatively easy to do.
That'd be really great. Charlie, anything else staff needs?
No, I think the commission has given very good direction. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, with that, if we have no more comments or questions, we will close this item and move on to the final item of commissioner comments. Do any of our commissioners have comments at this time? No. Okay. Well, I'm going to make this a quick comment and thank everybody, staff and the commissioners here for all the many years. Not everyone has been here with 9 years with me, but this is my final meeting and I really appreciate the time here. It's been a lot of work, but very rewarding. And Charlie, I just want to commend you and your staff for always doing a great job. You guys always provide a lot of information for us and answer whatever questions that we have that you weren't anticipating. So it's been a pleasure to serve, and my retirement date with the University of California is the 29th of this month, and so a new chapter in life, but I will still be involved in our city as much as I can be. But thank you all for everything.
Thank you, Chair Keller. It's been a pleasure to work with you for all these years, and I will just note that we do have a little roast planned for you and also for Vice Chair Mendez at the July 28th meeting. So I hope you'll be able to be there.
Oh, better put that on my calendar, I guess, huh? Very good. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're gonna miss you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.